Good evening and welcome to you in Radioland, at home and abroad on Facebook and on all other networks and platforms. Tonight, this is a very, very special edition of the Global View on Cue. It's Tuesday, 24th August, and it's right about now, it's just about 7 p.m. in the studios at Q95. The big stage. It is the 32nd Tuesday of 2021. What makes tonight special is that we are launching a unique organization that we believe is critical for supporting. One second, let me just get the mic. Somebody here, because I'm getting a little bit of feedback coming in, so I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping here. Yeah, so I think that's done. So now we go again. Yeah, so I was saying that it is a special night tonight because we are in fact launching a unique organization that we believe is critical for supporting and for sustaining the human rights, civil liberties, and our democracy in our cherished little island, Dominica. The Nature Island Dominica Civil Liberties Foundation. We just simply call it NIDCLF, Inc. So please visit our website right now, a brand new website right now, and browse along with us at www.nidclf.org. www.nidclf.org. I'm sure you will have questions, and I believe that Lambi will help us to take your calls, as Sheldon will help us stay on air, live to air on Q95 FM radio and on Facebook at YSQFM. We're actually streaming live right now on Facebook. And you can get us at Q95 FM radio or at WICEQFM. We will take your calls and we will attempt to answer all of your questions. I'm Sheridan Gregoire. People just call me Mr. G for short, just to give you a little background as to how this organization came about and why we're here tonight. Over the course of our several discussions of a wide range of topics on the Global View on Q during the past year or so, I believe we've illustrious people like Dr. Irving Andre, Attorney Gabriel Christian, Dr. Dion George, former Ambassador Crispin Gregoire, and many others recognize the need to do something to secure and promote human rights, democracy, and civil liberties in Dominica. So we proposed the Nature Island Dominica Civil Liberties Foundation, and all of us agreed it was a good idea. So I invited, I believe, Dr. Simone, Matthew later on, CSM Ralph, Command Sergeant Major Ralph Alcindor, who's retired. I also invited the retired police ASP, Nicholas George, and Dr. Emmanuel Finn, this illustrious gentleman there in Washington, D.C., to join us. And they all very happily came on board the cause to help our Nature Island through this venture. So we all contributed in one way or another, and there we are today with NIDCLF, Inc., a not-for-profit foundation registered in the United States to assist Nature Island Dominica and our Kalinago and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters. Give me just 1 second. Let me turn off somebody's mic again because we are getting some feedback coming.
I can hear you.
And we want to eliminate.
Sarah's in Boston and a lot.
Okay, so I've just turned off somebody's mic. So that here we are. We can go again. So essentially in this journey forward today, what we want to do is to ensure that as our country moves forward, we move towards a stable, fair, equitable, and balanced development. But without much further ado, I simply want to, and it's my delight, in fact, to carry out this duty to introduce the members of the board of directors of NIDCLF, Inc. And I'm the president, Sheridan Gregoire. Vice president and COPSEC is Dr. Simone Matthew. The treasurer is Dr. and CFO is Dr. Dion George. And many of our members, Dr. Irving Andre, Attorney Gabriel Christian, former Ambassador Crispin Gregoire, Command Sergeant Major retired Ralph Alcindor, retired Senior Police ASP Nicholas George, and Dr. Emmanuel Finn. These are the members of our board of directors for the time being. We also have what we call a working secretariat, which comprises of myself, Dr. Simone Matthew, Dion George, and former Ambassador Crispin Gregoire. So Nature Island Dominica Civil Liberties Foundation, Inc., NIDCLF, Inc. It's a nonprofit foundation registered in the United States. And the website, as we said, is NIDCLF.org. I repeat it so that you can go there, take a quick look, and I know later on you'll have some questions for us. We'll be happy to take your questions. And but browse along with us, please. Our email address, if you need to contact us, is nidclf@gmail.com. Now, our social networks are all active, all of them. They're all active now, so you can go in there and start communicating with us, post stuff, like us, share our stuff, and so we'd be happy if you just engage us on all of our social networks. So here it is. Let me just briefly go through some of what the organization is about. So initially, and I'm sure our board members are going to expand on much of that. So the vision of NIDCLF Inc. is for a free and just society in which equality of opportunity reigns while fostering sustainable democracy, human rights, and civil liberties on our nature island, Dominica. Our broad mission is to consolidate the gains of a democratic society on Dominica and preserve the human rights of all Dominicans by promoting the rule of law, good governance, and fair administration of justice through advocacy, education, information, and exposure of all forms of abuse. The goal, we can say, is to assist and support all efforts and initiatives in Dominica geared at preserving democracy, human rights, and civil liberties. So the objective, we can look at the close objective, is to provide advocacy, education, as we've been saying, information, and to raise funds to help ensure that appropriate legal defense counsel is available to fight corruption, violations of democracy, human rights, civil liberties on our island. I'm pretty sure that everybody recognizes the noble ideals. Well, part of our work, of course, is sourcing support to secure democracy, human rights, and civil liberties, because you have to find support for that, and providing advocacy to fight against abuse and brutality and things of that nature. And our work involves really collaborating. It will involve collaborating with many, many organizations and affiliates, concerned citizens movements, legal entities, law enforcement agencies, NGOs, media outlets, civil groups. We will work towards enhancing sustainable efforts to maintain democracy, human rights, and civil liberties and prevention of abuse. So this is especially important as it relates to the elderly, women, and minors. So we intend to accomplish this by raising finances for purposes of legal defense funds against such abuses. So now we are aware that organizations like Concerned Citizens Movement, youth organizations, and all these groups there, they are in fact sometimes engaged in peaceful protests and actions, and we think it is the right of civilians and citizens to engage in peaceful protests. And these aggrieved citizens are often unable to get justice because some of them find it very difficult, and they don't have the financial resources to engage legal counsel in order to have proper representation in a court system if matters go to a court system. So I believe we would look at select cases that we could assist in these regards. So for these and other reasons, I think it's imperative that NIDCLF, NIDCLF, continuously seeks out sources of funds to assist victims and aggrieved persons and entities to deter perpetrators from exceeding the authority and from engaging in abuses. So here are some criteria that we have set out there to access such assistance, including issues that are of public or national interest and benefit, contribute to promoting and preserving democracy, contribute to protection of human rights and civil liberties, to protection of women, children, and elderly from abuse, to prevention of national economic abuse due to corruption, to fight against police brutality, environmental protection and preservation, fight to mitigate climate change and global warming, protection and preservation of architectural heritage, but all of that must include some pro bono contributions to the project from the persons who hope to benefit from our assistance. So about NIDCLF, I mean, as we said before, I mean, the whole idea is we would be advocating for equitable reforms that span well beyond any person or party. So We're not interested in looking at individuals or political parties or any side of anything to advance the mission. But all we want to do is advance the mission and the goals and objectives of this organization to foster democracy, human rights, and civil liberties for all citizens and residents of Dominica, and we mean all, towards ensuring that every citizen and resident can have an opportunity to enjoy a reasonable living standard and quality of life and help eliminate poverty and mendicancy wherever possible. So when NIDCLF will dare to advocate for and will help to create this equitable reform, more equitable reforms that ensure this democracy, law and order, human rights, civil liberties of all our citizens and residents in Dominica. And we'll do this through advocacy, through education, through information, exposing incidents of abuse. We started the simple idea of bringing the best from us to you. This was the simple idea, the foundation. Give our best to you. And so from our founders and board members, working secretariat, to our frontline workers and volunteers, we always put love first, careful thought first into all that we do. We hope that you will in fact participate and support everything that we do and share the experience with others. We expect to be continuously seeking to raise civil defense funds from individuals, from corporations, donor agencies, NGOs, international donors, state agencies, and affiliates. Hopefully, this will help with the preservation of our democracy and human rights, civil liberties, and help prevent abuse, especially, as I said before, of elderly, minors, and women in Dominica. So we're looking at a number of potential affiliates that we hope to engage with as we go along. As we said, we're new, it's a work in progress, but we look forward to, over the next 12 months or so, to work with many affiliates, maybe somewhere between 50 and 100 affiliates, and these organizations would be located in Dominica, in the region, and globally. And that is why I gave our email address, so anyone who's interested in contacting us to discuss further, it's nidclf@gmail.com. So if you wish to be one of our donors or subscribers or members or affiliates, and wish to benefit from whatever assistance that we can source towards the fulfillment of these goals and objectives that we have outlined. So you're also encouraged to go to our website and you can read all about it. All of those things that I'm talking about are right there on the website, and you could make a contribution at any time. You'll see some donate buttons very prominently displayed in many different places. Don't be shy. If you have a little contribution you'd like to make, no matter how small it is as we go along, don't be afraid, make it. And all right, if you wish to assist or support with some worthy causes that present themselves from time to time. So among the members of our board of directors, I am pleased to note that we have many contacts in several important private sector organizations. I mean, if we look at all of our board members, the aggregate of the contacts that we have in private sector organizations, in corporations and state institutions, in agencies and NGOs. We are also well connected to leading attorneys, university professors, researchers, investigative reporters, media houses in many countries. But best of all, we are networking with Dominican experts globally in many fields and important areas of expertise in Dominica, in the region, and also globally. So we will continue to reach out to our Dominican experts wherever you are. Contact us at nidclf@gmail.com. Register your expertise so that we can call on your professional services whenever the need arises. So you can simply go to our website at NIDCLF.org, contact us there, or register to become a member or a subscriber or a donor, whatever you wish. So here is what we definitely will support: protection of the environment, promotion of resilience against the negative impacts of climate change, preservation of human rights, protection of civil liberties, prevention of political victimization, fights against police abuse, police brutality. We'll support police reforms and what some people call community policing, but many people call it different things now. Promotion of peaceful protests, advocacy of good and accountable governance, promotion of law and order, fights against corruption in public office, advocacy for integrity and in public office, and against, of course, public economic abuse or abuse of public assets. So with these few words there, I hope I have sort of given the background and whet your appetite to have you go on the website and and take a peek, go through, browse through, and satisfy yourself about what we're all about. And don't be afraid to give us a call later. We'll welcome your calls. And so I just now wish to take the opportunity to introduce again our board members. And I'm going to ask our board members to say a few words. So I'm going to first go through now. I'm going to ask Dr. Simone Matthew to turn on her mic because I want to go to her now, Vice President and COPSEC of NIDCLF, to say a few words to us. Dr. Matthew?
Yes, good evening, Mr. G. Good evening to the listeners of Q95, and thank you, Mr. G, for the invitation to be a part of this organization. And for anyone who's listening, the website again is N as in Nancy, I as in India, D as in David, C as in Charlie, L, F as in Ford.org. And if you're joining us via Facebook Live, I've also gone ahead and posted the link to the website as a comment, so you can simply click on the comments. And even before I begin with the introductions, I just want to acknowledge everyone who's joining us via Facebook Live as well. We have Nixon Pear, we have Gerald Dorset, Marcelin Edwards, Eliza Lewis, Teresa, Susanna. So thank you for being here. We encourage you to share the live as we look forward to engaging you in this conversation. So as Mr. G already mentioned, I am Simone Matthew, and by profession, I'm in psychology, but my true passion is always Dominica. So in my daytime job, I'm an industrial organizational psychology associate professor, which simply means that it's the psychology of work, leadership, employee motivation. But my true passion is Dominica. And you know, like so many of us, I may have physically left Dominica, but my heart and my mind is always in Dominica. So after about 20 years of being in the field of psychology, I thought that I wanted to make a more significant contribution to my island home. So I wrote the book Push Past 10 just as a way to encourage all of us who have those personal goals that are always sitting on the shelf to do something about them. And with that came the opportunity to do a radio program on TDN Radio. And again, I want to just thank the family over there, TDN, Sam George, Nicole Georges Bennett, for the opportunity. So we just get energized. We come together as a community and we get energized for the week and we work on those goals. And from that, you know, I just thought about the importance of Facebook and just connecting everyone. As you can take a look, and I'm sure everyone on the panel this evening will tell us where they're joining us from. But I know, for example, I'm in Georgia, Mr. G's in Canada. We have folks in Maryland, in Dominica. So just an opportunity to connect the world around us, to build a global community where we are able to promote each other, we are able to support each other. And so I am very happy about being a part of this new venture where we will be tapping into the resources of our Dominican brothers and sisters at home and abroad, where we will be able to fight and be the gatekeepers of democracy in Dominica. And the beautiful thing about hosting the Facebook Live programs that I do via Push Past 10 is that you are able to see that whether we are laborites, we are UWPites, we are APP, we are Freedom Party, everyone comes together. It is a neutral platform. We are objective and we simply have one goal in mind: to promote each other and to support our country. And that is what I am hoping to see here with this new venture, that regardless of color, regardless of party, regardless of religious affiliation, that we see the need to be the gatekeepers of the democracy in our country, that we also see the importance of supporting human rights, basic human rights of our African and Kalinago people in Dominica. So very excited to be a part of the venture, Mr. G. Thank you for the invitation as well. And also thank you for the invitation to do Roots Connection on Q, where we also tap into the expertise. So it's about, you know, building that global community. You know, I might be an idealist, but I just think there's so much potential when we can bring everyone together for a common cause. So with that, I want to say a special good evening to everyone who's listening and watching via Facebook Live. And we're looking forward to engaging with you this evening. So don't forget to call us, and also don't forget to post those comments on Facebook Live. Mr. G, back to you.
Yes, and obviously, folks, wherever you're listening from, wherever you are in your neck of the woods, you see what happens when you take a young lady from Bath Estate and you release her into the world, into the global community, and see what she makes of herself. You see her now, she's giving back to her country. I mean, we all know that that is what happened to us. We grew up with very poor, humble beginnings, and we worked hard. You don't get there by not working hard. It takes hard work and perseverance and dedication and commitment. But we're all getting there. Again, we're still a work in progress. I have to go over to Treasurer and CFO Dr. Dion George. But before I do, I just wanted to acknowledge the distinguished presence of two of our colleagues here, Darren Sylvester and David Michael. They've kindly consented to join us here tonight, and I'm sure that we will hear from them a little later on, because these are distinguished gentlemen, and I'm sure they have a lot that they can contribute to what this organization stands for. So they will have an opportunity to say a few words this evening. But I want to go over now Dr. Dion George. Dr. Dion George is over there in Atlanta, Georgia. And Dion, if you turn on your mic is on, so it means that you can jump in right now.
All right, good evening, and thank you very much for inviting me. I will confess, very seldom I am rendered speechless, but after hearing that shining star voice from Dr. Simone Matthew, I must say I feel very pleased to be part of this illustrious team tonight. Good evening to my other panelists, especially good evening to the people of Dominica, particularly my community of Salisbury. Of course, whenever we have an event like this, we have to give thanks to the Creator, to the Holy Spirit for putting us together when we put our minds and our heart into a good venture. And so the couple minutes I have, I just want to share what basically I would consider my purpose for wanting to support such an organization as NIDCLF. And I would start with a couple quotes. The first quote I would start with is from James Madison. And he says, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. And he went on and said that if angels were to govern men, there would be no need for external or internal controls. And I speak toward that because democracy is not remote control. There need to be institutionalized rules that would govern how democracy works. And I wanted to start off with that saying. The other person I want to reference is Benjamin Franklin. And it was quoted of a lady says, "Sir, what sort of government are you giving us?" And Benjamin Franklin, founder of the United States Constitution, says, "Madam, we give you a republic. We give you a republic if you can keep it." And the emphasis here is on the recognition that, again, it's not by remote control, that there needs to be a total vigilante, a total effort towards maintaining a democracy. And so, of course, when we talk about democracy, we refer to the demo, that is the Greek word for people, and kratos, the Greek word for krasi, which means to rule. And of course, we know that democracy is a government by the people. And so the question becomes, what are we fighting for? Are we fighting for something that we feel that we are losing control? Is it such that it's an indirect democracy where persons elect officials to represent them? Do we feel that we are being represented? So what are we fighting for? But of course, I will continue with one more quote, and that quote is from Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson is the one who wrote the Declaration of Independence of the United States. It's a very famous term that most people are familiar with that says, "We hold this truth to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by the Creator with unalienable rights, among which is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But it continues. It might sound very poetic, but it continues. In fact, it's very revolutionary. It says that if a government were to abridge these rights, it is the responsibility of the people to overthrow that government and elect a new one. In fact, other authors like Mark Twain, in his novel, The Common Sense, that speak towards that. And indeed, we are very familiar with the Bill of Rights, the Bill of Rights of most democracies that speak toward the need for people to peacefully assemble, the need for the freedom of press, the need for persons to be able to express their grievances to the government. These are fundamental rights of all countries. And so I guess my introductory statement would be one of these, that Dominica and Dominicans ought to see this organization as a breath of fresh air, as something for all Dominicans, that this is a non-governmental organization that is willing to work with all groups to secure civil rights, civil liberties, the environment, to maintain democracies and work towards police reforms. And so we say these things because we have seen over several of the shows that we have had where we speak of constitutional reform, where we speak of the need for police reform. And my experience as a political scientist and of course as one who observes history, persons are more effective when they get involved in a cooperation, that we are stronger together. And so where an organization hails to raise funds to support these very ideals that Mr. Gregoire so eloquently spoke about, the need to secure the environment, the need to maintain democracy. And of course, to even be more specific, when we think of what has happened in my beloved village of Salisbury, do the community members have advocacy? Do they have a need for financial need? If we consider what happened with some bus drivers, where we saw on social media of blatant abuse, should there be perhaps some reform? Should there be some sort of advocacy? Is there someone who might need housing? And so these values are values that certainly is not partisan, but these are values, I think, that are noble and values that I think all Dominicans should want to support. And so as the chief financial officer of this organization, I know that I am supported with a very strong team to manage the financing, to track the cash flow. But I know fundraising, of course, we have a working secretariat, and I feel very positive that we can achieve our objective. And so I will leave with this opening remark. Thank you.
And thanks a lot, Dr. Dion George. I mean, as you can see, he is in fact the keeper of the treasury. So we have to show a lot of respect for this man. He also has to account to the federal government, because the fact of the matter is that once we get our certificate confirming our 501c3 status, it means that anybody who makes donations or contributions to NIDCLF will be tax deductible. That donation will be tax deductible in the United States. So in fact, as a not-for-profit organization, we have to keep absolutely proper records, and because the federal government will expect us to file our taxes, and I believe that they look at non-profit organizations very, very closely in terms of the operations and whatever they do in terms of record keeping. So we expect to keep impeccable records, and I do not think there's anyone better at this time to take care of that for us than Dr. Dion George. So I want to go over to a gentleman who really, in fact, needs absolutely no introduction. In fact, he just, in fact, did something there which very few men in Dominica have done before, or very few men anyway. He just released two very outstanding books, very outstanding publications, which I believe the entire world will have access to very, very soon. But for now, Dominicans certainly have access to those two books. One of them spoke about one of our illustrious leaders who's gone into the great beyond, that is Rosie Douglas, and then he spoke about all of what is happening in literature in Dominica. So I really just want to, besides him being a distinguished justice and an illustrious lawyer and all those things there. I can say so much about him, but really and truly, the praise has to go to his wife, who has been taking care of him and ensuring that he stays on the straight and narrow. So let me go over to Justice Dr. Irving Andre and ask him to ensure that his mic is turned on so that he can say a few words to us. But I hope he will be able to say quite a few words to us, in fact, tonight. Dr. Andre, over to you.
Thank you for the generous introduction, Mr. G. Obviously, you've overstated the case, but we will not hold that against you. Let me thank my esteemed persons on this program this evening. Let me thank your listeners. Let me thank the worthy Lambi and showing at the back of the controls. Again, as I said, or as I will say, it is always a good day whenever we are alive, whenever we are well, and whenever we can seek to a contribution. And let me indicate that at no worse or better time is there a need for a contribution from those prodigal sons and daughters who have fled the boundaries of Dominica, who have achieved significantly, unlike the biblical prodigal son, but who seek spiritually and otherwise to return and to make a contribution. And let me indicate that that unwavering desire to make a contribution is not weakened, is not diminished by any frosty reception which might await those who seek to make a contribution to the promised land. Because we are all animated and motivated by the belief that this is your homeland, that irrespective of how much time you spend abroad, it is still your homeland. You are motivated by the fact that you will not allow any potentate, any monarch to seek to separate you, sever your links to your country, and that you seek always to make any kind of contribution you can, a contribution which reflects the tremendous success that you've enjoyed abroad. And so we stand at this juncture in our history, a juncture when, unfortunately, we are besieged by every pestilence of governance you can imagine. We are besieged of all the ills of governance. We are besieged by a significant desire on the part of a significant portion of the population to receive help, to assist those in need, not just those who still languish on the tarpaulins as we speak, not just those who cannot find jobs that they seek, but those who seek direction, those who seek inspiration, those who seek a helping hand. And so we stand at this juncture where we are privileged enough to try to make a difference. Some of us, unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but not all of us can give help in the same degree as each other. But that is not the point. Remember the biblical passage where it is said that the poor man who donates 1 cent of his possession has donated just as much as the wealthy person who donates $1,000. So this is not a question of charity. This is a question of contribution. It is a question of courage. It's a question that to whom much is given, much is owed. It is basically a reclaiming of the biblical injunction that you are your brother's keeper. It is a recognition that we understand as no others can understand the sacrifice of the Almighty Father, the suffering that he bore, because he didn't come to earth. He didn't come as a monarch of all he surveyed. He came as the biblical reference stands, as a Nazarene, as someone who walked among those who had no shoes, someone who walked and assisted those who had no clothes, someone who assisted those who were dismissed as pariahs. He assisted the lepers of his day. And today we have to come to this assistance of those who are pilloried, those who are persecuted, those who are dismissed, those who are targeted, those who are tarnished, not because of anything they've done wrong, but because they dare to stand for what is right. This is a sacred mission. This is not a mission which is an expression of self-interest. This is not a mission in which we take some type of joy in human suffering. On the contrary, we are called, all of us, with humility, I should say, help our country in its hour of need. Because the fact of the matter is, any objective analysis will show that we've deviated from the sacred principles that have governed us, that have animated us, that have motivated us, that have stimulated the likes of Edward Oliver LeBlanc, Edison James, Roosevelt Douglas, Pierre Charles, and others, giving them a reason, head of state, for regarding it as a sacred mission to govern with the best interests of Dominicans at heart. Take, for example, the recent statement by the St. Lucian Prime Minister. He indicated indirectly that the opposition is part of the governing apparatus of the state. And he promised to give them the resources to carry out their functions. Carry out their functions as people who have the sacred duty to call the government to task, to expose their shortcomings, not to persecute them, not to threaten to kill them in the House of Assembly, not to treat them as if they're pariahs, not to treat them as if they're lepers, not to treat them as if they're criminals, not to fling bogus charges against them, but to treat them as part of the governing apparatus of the state. And those of us who remain silent, we become complicit in the destruction of our democracy. So we stand today, recognizing that we have to give back what we received from the island of Dominica. Because whether we acknowledge it or not, all of us were nurtured by our experiences growing up in Dominica. Some of us, we assume that we are now successful and we no longer need those connections which served us so well in our hour of need. But fortunately, many of us are standing and saying, on the contrary, we are privileged. We are privileged not because of some innate superiority or intellectual superiority that we possess. We are privileged to have grown up in an environment where we could develop our talents. We could sow our talents on fertile soil rather than stony soil. And that we will not do like Lot's wife and flee or turn back and be transformed into a pillar of salt. We will basically accept our responsibility and give back whatever we can give back. And that's the bottom line. We're not calling on anyone to give a $10,000 to show that they have. We are calling on everyone to give of their talents what they can afford to give. No more, no less. And that is all we stand for as we speak today. This is a day the Lord has made. And this is the day that we have to rejoice. And I certainly look forward to adding my 2 cents worth to this worthy initiative. I thank you, Mr. G.
Well, thanks a lot, Dr. Andre. And I know that as we proceed this evening, I know that you will have a lot more that you'll want to contribute to the conversation. I know that all of our board members and all of our members on the panel here, as the discussion gets opened up after we've made our initial presentations, I know there's going to be a good dialogue and exchange, not only among us, ourselves, but with our listeners, with our people on Facebook. And I'm pretty sure that maybe Dr. Simone might want to take the opportunity now, turn on the mic, and to just maybe acknowledge some of our folks on Facebook. And I certainly want to acknowledge all the people who are listening in Radio Land.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, Mr. G. So we have quite a few people on the Facebook Live, and we thank them for being here. We're also thanking everyone for sharing the Facebook Live, and we look forward to your comments, your questions, anything you would like to share with us. So Don Robinson, good evening. Ashby, Scotland, thank you for being here. Marceline, great to see you as always. Sunshine, Ebony, Joseph Parallor, Penny Shirley, Dave Bertrand, Margaret Wallace. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and we look forward to your contributions this evening.
Yes, thanks a lot for that, Dr. Simone. Dr. Andre has raised a number of issues, and I'm pretty sure the discussion will come back to some of those. And I know some of those issues, they're both Darren Sylvester, our colleague out there in the UK, and David Michaels. We have a lot they can contribute to this. I know David is passionate about policing and about things related to that. And I know that David has himself held some substantial positions of high responsibility in London. And I'm hoping tonight he will share some of that with us within the context, within the framework of what this organization is all about and how we can utilize the kinds of experiences like his in going forward. As I said, we are a work in progress, and we expect to take advice and counsel as we go along to improve, because as Dr. Andre said, it's all about giving back. I mentioned Dr. Simone coming from a community out there. I'm from Grand Bay. I mean, Dion is from Salisbury. We're all from little parts of Dominica. The whole idea, we all have to really appreciate and be thankful to Dominic for nurturing us in the way it did, and for our upbringing in that sort of a community setting, where it really took a village to raise a child in those days. And I think we're all grateful for that. So I just want to alert Lambi that we will be taking the people's calls, and I think if you see that the calls have started to come, you give me a signal, and I will go over to you so that you can give them the numbers that they can call, because I know there's people who want to interact with us as we go along. And so once you give me that signal, just ensure that we can hear the callers. So I'm just alerting you, Lambi. I just want to go over now to this gentleman from the East. His name is Dr. Emmanuel Finn. He's a dental surgeon out there in Washington, D.C., lots of experience, a very good family man. And I just want to go over to you, Dr. Finn, if you could turn on your mic, and then so that you can say a few words. So take as much time as you need. And I believe there's things you'll want to say now and things you'll want to come back and say later. So let me go over to you, Dr. Finn.
Well, thank you, Mr. G, and also to my fellow board members here. This is indeed a special occasion. It's really exciting to see so many of our sons and daughters away. The mosaic here, and everything leads us back to the middle of Roseau. Everything leads us back to Dominica, to its rocky shores. For me, it leads me back to the Lapland Valley. Listen to Dr. Simone, listen to Dr. Andre, listen to Dr. Dion. You can't help but have an emotional edge here. Too much is given, much is given, much is this. How the saying goes, too much if you're given much, you have to return the favor.
What the saying says that because Emmanuel Finn has a lot, he should give a lot.
If you may. So, but the the point I'm trying to drive home here is that for me, it began all the way back, in that mountain village back east, right? Back in the southeast. And I know lately Lapland has been in the news the last 24 hours, and it really pains me because when you think of people from the east like LCDDA, NKL Christian, honorable men, honorable people who represented the less fortunate, and they took their jobs and the positions seriously. I can't help but to think that what happened? Can we go back to those days, or those days are long gone, or it's just a nostalgic thing? I not, but obviously it's a tall order. So at the end of the day, all roads lead us back to Dominica. I'm here in Washington, D.C. Mr. G is outside of Toronto. Gabriel is not too far from me in suburban Washington. Commander Alcindor is in Atlanta. Commander George is in Dominica, holding the fort. So again, this circle, the world is round, right? And it's small, and so it's a global village. But I think those of us from the small mountainous island have we produce so many people, so much talent. If we were to harness all this talent and bring it back to Dominica, I think we'll be further along. I think that at least we can agree with that. So I just want to say that the Civil Liberties Foundation here, it's really no more than a think tank. And Gabriel, you and I have had several discussions on this. And in America alone, there were 2,000 think tanks. You have conservative think tanks like the Heritage Foundation. You have more liberal center foundations like the Brookings Institute. But everybody is contributing um, to America. So we don't have to agree. But one thing we have to agree upon is lifting up the livelihood of our people. You know, that's the bottom line, the dignity of our people. And I think you and I can agree that it's a little bit in short supply in Dominica today for obvious reasons. So I'd just like to outline, juxtapose what the Civil Liberties Foundation aims to this, aims on objectives, if you may. It's really to perform research and advocacy regarding the social, political strategy, if you may, economics, law enforcement, which is a big one today, I think. And to me, I want to just stop here for a minute. I'm very, very proud to know that two of our police chiefs, Matthias Dadai Lestrada, as we call him affectionately, Dadai, and Chief Filbert, these are guys from not too far from where I grew up, who came from the mountains to lead Dominica's police force, and they did an outstanding job. And the gentleman who currently is in an acting position, who also hails from La Plaine, I hope he can follow their footsteps and be a professional police officer, professional leader, because obviously legacy is something that we all have to hang on to. So that is my hope. And again, this is an emotional plea here to the gentleman who currently has the title of the head of the police department, because obviously we feel, and all the indications show that the police force is broken right now. And there's factual evidence to that. And once you have a broken police department, once you have a broken security apparatus, I think you're in trouble. And when you're in trouble, democracy is in trouble. When democracy is in trouble, the souls of our people are in trouble. We don't have to go too far. We can go to Haiti. We can go to Libya. We can go to Mobutu Zaire. All these places, when democracy is in trouble, the souls of our people are in trouble, we're in trouble. So this is what this is all about. Now, you may disagree with the efforts here, and it's your right and your prerogative, but I think history will guide us as to what we're doing here today. We're trying to preserve the democracy. And let me just add one last thing before I turn it over. I don't know how you define home. The definition of home is relative. I talked about coming from the Lapland Valley. That's my real home, or is it? Today I'm sitting in Northwest Washington, D.C. Is this my home? Whatever your definition of home is, I think our allegiance, certainly my allegiance, is to Dominica. Land of thy birth, I say, you know, this, remember our national anthem. I have it written right here in my home office. I have a picture of grammar school on River Road right here in my office. I have a picture with the cadet corps after parade right here in my office. I wish I could pan my computer for you to see. These are the foundations. I always tell my teenage girls the day I left the village for DGS and for the world, you know. So we're compelled here. No one dragged us to join this organization. Yeah, we're gonna have some along the way, some skirmishes, but this is vibrancy. And I think the appeal is to the rest of Dominica to understand something fundamental. You know, Dominica belongs to Dominican people. To me, to you, we have differences, and that's fine. You may support who you want to support, and that's fine. But it belongs to me, it belongs to you, it belongs to everybody. It doesn't belong to one team. And once we understand that, and that is fundamental, we can begin talking. So today I'm here. I stand on the shoulders of people like Pierre Collier, who in 1893, he and the band of barefooted and shirtless peasants challenged the colonial governor of Dominica and the British commander Bailey for the non-payment for the payment of taxes. Yes, people died, but the British government changed the way it taxed peasants in the British Commonwealth, in the British Caribbean, in the British West Indies. So this is my commitment. I will, you know, you guys know I write. I'll continue to write when I have the time. I'll continue to write because Dominica belongs to me. It belongs to you. It doesn't belong to anybody else, to all of us collectively. And again, we may agree to disagree, or we agree to disagree. But that's why I'm here tonight. Thank you, Mr. G, and thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for that, for your introductory remarks at this point. I mean, I just want to assure our listeners and our viewers on Facebook that we are now just making our introductory remarks. So we're being sort of generalized in our remarks, in our statements, but I can assure you and I promise you that as the evening goes along, we will get into some specific things which I know that some Dominicans are concerned about, to do with human rights, to do with civil liberties and so on, and abuse. And I'm pretty sure that our callers will call and remind us that there are some major issues that our organization, our new organization, may need to address its mind to, that we should pay attention to. And I have no doubt that we will be reminded by some of our members on the board here, and even David Michael and Darren Sylvester, about some of the issues that we should concern ourselves about based on the experiences in London and other parts of the world. We know Darren has been doing a lot of things in London. He might tell us a little bit about that when he says a few words. But I just want to promise you that we're not going to be speaking generally all night. I noticed a moment ago, Dr. Andre may have looked like he wanted to say something. I don't know whether he still wants to do it now. If you do, Dr. Andre, I'll give you a moment to do that if you'd like to. I noticed that when I think somebody was talking, you want to turn on your mic if you'd like to do that. So please turn on your mic first.
Oh, Dr. Finn was saying that a recent event in La Plaine from one of the representatives of La Plaine was hurting him. And I wondered whether he had a busted head. I saw he had a plaster on his head, and I wondered whether he suffered any head injury. And that was the reason why he was hurting so badly. That's all.
Did you want Dr. Finn to try to help you to?
It's entirely up to him.
Oh, okay. Well, as you know,
were you hospitalized because of a busted head? Is my simple question.
Your guess is just as good as mine, doctor. I don't know.
Well, if you'd like to answer that later, Dr. Finn, we can excuse you for now. You can always come back and answer it later when you have thought about it. But I mean, I want to go over now to if he's with us, because I hope he's not having difficulties with his technology there, with retired police ASP Nicholas George. Mr. George, are you able to turn on your mic and say a few words? Because I see that your mic is still off. So if you're able to do that, then we'll go over to you. But if your mic is not on, you're having some problems, then we'll probably move on. And Lambert, before I move on, I just wanted to ask you again, would you like to take a couple calls now, or would you like to just wait a little bit later? If you'd like to, you can give the numbers, and just give the numbers out so our listeners will know that we'll be taking their calls, and these are the numbers to call. If you have calls now, we could take them now, or we can always take them later. Okay, so you go right ahead, and let us hear the callers, Lambi.
Our numbers are 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. Let me repeat those numbers again. 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. With this illustrious panel that we have, we are standing by for your calls from wherever you are right now.
Mr. Gregory, may I speak now?
Yes, I just wanted to, if Lambi is not going to take any calls now, I just wanted to do two things just before you, Nicholas George. I wanted to go over to Dr. Simone again to maybe we acknowledge some of the people on Facebook, but they are with us and the numbers are growing. I don't know whether you might want to take one or two of their comments since we're not taking any calls live now. If you can just turn on your mic, Dr. Simone, and maybe we can acknowledge some of the comments of our viewers on Facebook.
Yes, absolutely. So the contributions are coming in, and we want to thank everyone who's making a contribution right now. Marston Edwards says that's why civic groups are absolutely necessary since they play a major role collectively. So just confirming that together we can do so much more work. Joseph Parla, Sunshine Ebony, good evening. Penny Shirley, good evening. Dave Bertrand. Margaret Wallace says we will accept our responsibility and give back to Dominica, Dr. Irvin Andre. So I think we already have a commitment of a donation. So that is wonderful to hear. David Joseph, greetings and good evening. And he always also says, indeed, Dominica belongs to us all, and we all want to see our country propel forward. We may have different ways and ideas how to achieve that goal, but at the end of the day, all we want for our country is good. David, I don't think any one of us could have said it better. Ezra Winston, thank you also for your comments. And Ezra says, I have been convinced that Dominica's salvation will come from the diaspora. All resources together, new blood, fresh ideas. Ezra, good initiative. I am all in. And Didi Esther, good evening all. So I think we can already see the commitment to this program, Mr. G, especially when we look at cases such as when, the bus driver had that incident with the police, and he was actually on the radio seeking assistance for his legal fees. So I'm sure we will get more into details with the particulars as we continue this evening.
Yes, and I know, Dr. Simone, that I believe Dr. Dion George will remind us of the plight of the people of Salisbury. I believe they were tear gassed on the night of the eve of election in 2019, and they feel aggrieved, and I'm pretty sure that they probably feel they're looking for assistance somewhere, and I'm pretty sure that is something that you will want to comment further on as we go along. But let me now go over to Nicholas George. Nicholas George, if you could turn on your mic. Yes, your mic is on. So you want to take an opportunity and say a few words, take as much time as you like. You're the man on the ground. You have been with the police for a long time. You're a very senior police officer, great experience. You're known throughout Dominica. You've done work in the Caribbean. So you're someone who's highly experienced. Share with us and see if you can relate some of your work to the kind of goals and objectives, what we're trying to accomplish here with NIDCLF. Over to you, Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Gregoire. Good evening to the illustrious panel that I am now privileged to be with. I want to say that it appears that had NIDCLF been in existence during my tenure of office, I would have probably served much more credibly than I probably did. So I want to say that the time is opportune for NIDCLF to be with us. And though Mr. David Michael is with us, somehow I happen to feel as if, well, I am on trial in Dominica because everybody else is out there and I am alone in Dominica having to present. The ideals, the mission, the vision, the objectives of NIDCLF are all things that I can relate to. Most of them talked about law and order, the police, and the attitude, the question of community policing. I happen to be the co-author of the Dominica Police Force's community policing plan. I serve, I think, credibly with distinction for 39.5 years. And sadly, I spoke my mind sometime in July and had the unfortunate attendance of two van loads of police at my home coming to arrest me for having spoken freely and given what I consider to be advice to the police. But that does not deter me, and it will not prevent me. Actually, it reinforces my commitment to serve my country in a different capacity. I have gone onto the political arena, and there too, my police colleagues have met with me, and they have prosecuted me. So they have me on bogus charges at the court for doing what they alone think that I had done. I know I did nothing wrong. So the issue is real. It is real with me. So I have had within the month about 10 to 12 police officers come to my home to arrest me. And I have had to plead not guilty before a magistrate at the Roseau Court, merely for standing up for what is right to be done in Dominica. On the police side of things, I would just like to make a couple of comments that the police really, the force was established mainly from the principles that were written by Sir Robert Peel those many years ago. And I just want to refer to one or two of them. The basic mission for which the police exists is to prevent crime and disorder. And that the police should use physical force only to the extent necessary to secure observance of the law or to restore order when the existence of persuasion, advice, and warning is found to be insufficient. The police at all times should maintain a relationship with the public that gives reality to the historic tradition that the police are the public and the public is the police. I want to repeat that. The police are the public and the public is the police. The police being only members of the public who are paid to give full-time attention to duties which are incumbent on every citizen in the interest of community welfare and existence. And the last quote, the test of police efficiency is the absence of crime and disorder, not the visible evidence of police action in dealing with it. So these were part of the 9 principles upon which the police force was founded. And the laws, the subsection, well, I have to be careful with the subsection. The section 12 of the Police Act 1401 spells out the duty of the police, and they are akin to the principles enunciated by Sir Robert Peel. So I would like to say that the strength of Sir Robert Peel's principles must be given daily meaning by all police officers that are sworn to uphold the law in Dominica. And to properly adhere to these principles, the forces command and commanders should try and to inculcate values in them, or re-inculcate these where it is necessary. These important elements should shape the character of every police officer. One should seek to clothe oneself in the core values of honor, courage, commitment the force espouses to gain and maintain public trust and confidence. And I have this question. The question remains, however, are police officers always discharging their duties according to the law? Are these duties being discharged in good conscience? Are these duties being discharged in conformity with the oath taken by every member of the force, which states, I do swear or affirm that I will well and truly serve the government and people of the Commonwealth of Dominica as a member of the police force without favor or affection, malice or ill will, and that I will cause the peace to be preserved, and I will prevent to the utmost of my power offenses against the same, and that during any time that I do or may hereafter hold any appointment in the Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force, I will, to the best of my knowledge and skill, discharge all the duties faithfully according to law. So help me God. Nowhere in the duties or oath of office does it stipulate that police officers must be selective, discriminative, or abusive in discharge of their duties. And the question is, again, is there a need for reform in the police force? And I will say, yes, there is. Since I have retired from the police service, I'm sure when I was there, I was critiqued as well. I have abstained from publicly really critiquing the police force or criticizing the police force. But I think I have a duty to spell out things that I see that are not right so that we can get it right and serve the public deservedly and with respect, because the police is of the community and therefore should always respect the citizens, the citizenry of the community of Dominica. I think I'll stop here now.
Yes.
And I can contribute
Yes,
later.
yes, you can always come in later and contribute some. And I'm sure that you will, 'cause I know you have a lot more that you can contribute. But you know, we're in this thing. That's why I said later on, we will come to some specifics about issues that are of concern to Dominicans. Obviously, we as an institution, as an agency, would like to embrace the Police Welfare Association in Dominica as an affiliate. And we would like to work collaboratively with them. So whatever suggestions and ideas we have, and I'm pretty sure that David Michael here would have a number of suggestions. Maybe you might want to speak before I go over to our next board member. Maybe you might want to, David, just turn on your mic since we're talking about policing. Maybe share a little bit for a few minutes of your experience in policing and what advice you could have, because you can see this is an issue, and I will also go later on to Darren, because as somebody in the legal system, he would come across his engagements all the time. And so he would be able to give us some advice as what happens in some of the legal systems, which may be somewhat different to the experiences that we're having in Dominica from time to time. So David, let me just go to you. Maybe you can just share with us, introduce yourself. And I know you'll require an hour to just tell us all your qualifications and experience, but we don't have as much as an hour. So you might have to shorten the CV.
Yeah, I won't spend so much time on that, but thank you very much. And I as well as my career, 30-year career as a veteran police officer, culminating in me serving as a Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector. I'm also a strong human rights and equalities champion, so I was very interested to learn about the civil liberties organization and emphasizing on human rights and the rule of law. So I am very keen to see the developments as they go forward. Just before I say something about policing and policing in Dominica in particular, I would just like to say, in regards to the work your launch and your undertaking, just a quick quote from a former US President, John Adams. He said, "Let us tenderly and kindly cherish, therefore, the means of knowledge. Let us dare to read, think, speak, and write." And I know a number of the members of the board and the panel have already written extensively. And so my view is that, as already been said by Dr. Finn, we are all Dominicans, and none of us are more Dominican than the other. Doesn't matter what office we hold or what office we've held. And I always reassure myself of that, as someone who was born and grew up and went to primary school in Bellevue-Chopin, and Gabriel's aunt was my head teacher and Floss Christian. And so I always have that strength and confidence as a Dominican. Yes, I spent most of my adult life living and working overseas, but in recent years I have built my home and spend a lot of time living in Dominica, and I hope many members of the panel at every opportunity will take it to actually spend as much time as is possible in Dominica. With regards to policing, yes, I've had the privilege to have the knowledge, experience, and expertise, as I say, of 30 years as a detective, as a senior investigating officer, as someone who the British government and Scotland Yard has sent on missions abroad to. In fact, I've worked with all the agencies in the United States, the FBI, the DEA, the IRS. I was headhunted to go and present a paper to the International Labour Organization in Geneva in Switzerland. I was part of a Police and Prisons Civil Rights Union conference in Durban in South Africa, and I've done comparative policing presentations in Mauritius and Rodrigues, from which I got a fantastic letter of appreciation sent to the Commissioner of Scotland Yard. And I've always, even when I was living and working abroad, I've maintained the links with the Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force, going back to when I was still a recruit officer in London. I made contact with former Commissioner Desmond Blanchard, who I hold in high regard, and I have made contact with many of the those who served as commissioner and gazetted officers and rank and file officers, and indeed built links with the Police Welfare Association in Dominica. And for me, one of the things, as has already been said by Mr. George, the laws of Dominica are very clear. The Police Act in Dominica is very clear about the roles and responsibilities of the commissioner, the roles and responsibilities of every officer who's sworn into office, who takes that oath, and whose responsibilities and obligations are to the laws of Dominica and nothing else. And one thing I'm very clear about, it doesn't matter what jurisdiction we police officers serve in, whether it's in United States, Canada, France, United Kingdom, Dominica, and elsewhere in CARICOM, our obligation is to the law, and no one can direct you and order you to break the law, to do anything illegal. And I think that's a lot more obvious in places like when I served in London, in the United Kingdom. the discretion that constables are given. I remember once a colonel of police from Egypt came to London on a course, and he was saying he found it incredible the amount of responsibility and discretion a constable is accorded in London and the United Kingdom, whereas in Egypt, everything has to be brought back to the police station for the senior officers to sort out. So it doesn't matter what jurisdiction we're in, and if we're in Dominica, the laws of Dominica are clear, the Police Act is clear, and each officer takes that oath of office and their responsibilities to the laws of Dominica. And no one can direct you, order you, suggest to you, unless you want to be complicit in undermining your own, basically putting yourself at risk of prosecution for failing to do your duty under the law. Nobody, no senior officer, no one who holds any position of responsibility can direct you, order you to either break the law or to do anything that contradicts the actual laws of the country you serve in. So I think any police officers listening and those I've had contact with know that I am very clear and strong about that. Cultures can develop, and the cultures will be wrong if the cultures are undermining the rule of law in any way, shape, or form. Cultures are wrong if they undermine good discipline of police officers. The cultures are wrong if they don't inculcate that police officers are there to serve the public. They're not there to be overbearing. They certainly should not use excessive force. They should do their duty, uphold the law. If they feel if anyone is committing any offences, their duty is to bring those people before the courts, for the courts to administer justice. Police are not there. There are occasions where police can use force and occasions when police should use force. Force should always be reasonable and necessary and proportionate. But extrajudicial killings, unreasonable, unnecessary force is definitely things that should be abolished from whatever happened in the past. I wrote not that long ago, since the present acting commissioners in post, I wrote 2 articles and voiced the kind of approaches that the new commissioner, the new senior leadership team, and the Commonwealth of Dominica Police ought to be looking at in terms of leadership, management, accountability at different levels. And I hope the panel will get an opportunity to look at those articles, and I hope those listening on Facebook and wider, I'm sure many serving in the Dominica Police Service have already read them, but it'd be well worth the senior leadership people having another look rather than waiting for incident after incident to happen and for people to wonder why is a professional police service finding themselves in such situations.
Yes, and David, thank you for that, because I know that later on when we take the calls and even among ourselves in our discussions, I'm pretty sure that 1 or 2 issues and incidents will be raised, and maybe we can come back to you for some advice in terms of how you think they will handle if the incidents that occurred, or how they should be handled. What advice you would have? Because I mean, part of our work as a foundation, would be to try to mitigate some of those things and to see what we can to bring balance, because what you want is fairness and balance, and let cool heads prevail, because we want to ensure that our little country can move on and work well. A little later on, I want to come to Darren to give the few. But Lambert, just to remind you again that if you want to take any calls, just give me a sign and you can just go right ahead and we can butt in, and I will take the call, because the people have to be allowed to make the call so we can answer the question. I wanted to go over to Command Sergeant Major Retired, Ralph Alcindor. Ralph, I don't know whether you are on with us. Are you there?
I am there, Mr. G. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you very, very well. So go right ahead.
Well, good evening to our listeners at home, regionally and internationally. I am Ralph Alcindor, retired Command Sergeant Major, U.S. Army. What a privilege, Mr. G, to be among these great men, true patriots, who always have the desire to do good to our native land. But before I continue, Mr. G, permit me to give God the glory as he continues to enlighten and guide us as we undertake this important project, this work. Special thanks to you for inviting me, you're the president, for initiating such an important foundation in the interests of all Dominicans. Kudos to you, Mr. G. And to my colleagues, members, our Vice President, Dr. Simon Matthew, Vice President, our political scientist, Dr. Dion Judge, the only one in the house. Big up, Judge Dr. Irvin Andre, and our US-based Dr. Emmanuel Finn, attorney at law, our brother Gabriel Christian, one of Granby's finest, a superb diplomat, former Ambassador Crispin Gregoire, that's my homeboy, and the retired Superintendent of Police, Mr. Nicholas George. These are true patriots, Mr. G, as you know. A diversity of men committed to ensure our nature isle remains a democracy where everyone's rights are respected and treated equally. Thank you, gentlemen. I am proud to be a part of you. Mr. G, when you called me, you first called me to be a board member. I was cheerful because I thought it was a great idea. Q95 is I'm no stranger to Q95. And I can say to you, giving to my country or giving back to my country has always something I treasure. Because whenever you give one, you get 7 in return, whether you believe it or not. We need help in our nature isle, Mr. G, and I believe NIDCLF.org is the way to go. It is the way to go because it is a channel where we can give and make a big difference. I saw NIDCLF.org as the ideal foundation, an avenue where we can put our resources together and make a big difference. So we encourage our customers, our listeners, our friends and neighbors to give generously to this great endeavor you have gotten us into. One of the things, Mr. G, that really came to my attention and I thought it was a great idea is the idea that whatever we give, if you are in the US territories and in the United States, it is tax deductible. I know you alluded to that. Nothing is greater than that because we in the US, we know when we file taxes, we always want to nickel and dime and see where we can save. And NIDCLF.org is the ideal place for that. As my fellow countrymen know, I am a military man and I am always military oriented. I think in terms of strategy and what to do to protect our rights in Dominica. We know we need help. I don't think there is any other island in the Caribbean that needs help like Dominica, simply because we are behind in every facet of democracy. We are behind because our people tend to embrace a government that cares very little for people. And as you know, I've been very vocal on the radio station. When I first retired, I thought my crusade was to jump on board and make sure that Dominica gets in line where we can compete on par with its sister neighbors. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We are behind in every facet of democracy, everything you can think of. We cannot be compared with other islands in the region simply because of corruption. And me being a soldier, I am against corruption, not only on my native land, but in Africa, worldwide. I follow and I see what these despot leaders can do to their people. So NIDCLF.org is the big thing. In Georgia, here in Atlanta, we have a restaurant. They say, this is it. Well, if you can think of a foundation to help donate, this is it. Mr. G, we are living in hard times, and we know that, and people want to know how their money, their hard-earned income is spent. So we do understand people wanting to know all of that. NIDCLF.org, its mission, its objectives will do just that. When we talk of transparency, integrity, I believe NIDCLF will lead the way. So if anyone has any doubt in donating any cash to NIDCLF.org, fear not, my people, that's the way to go. We need your help, and I will plead with you over and over as we continue this program tonight, that whatever you can give, could be $10, $20, $30, $100, you won't regret it, because it will go back to your native land and it will be spent to help Dominica protect its democracy. We want our people to understand human rights and civil liberties are protected with our support. We advocate that every day of our life. We enjoy real democracy in America and in other Western countries. So I don't understand why some people at home would not like to have such privilege where they can speak and exercise their rights without being threatened by a system that is so corrupt. Having said all of that, Mr. G, I therefore urge our people to jump on board, help in whatever way they can, so we can get Dominica going where we are proud as diasporan to say, I am from Dominica and I stand for Dominica, and we won't be attached with the bad word called corruption, because corruption, when you talk of Dominica, you might as well think of corruption, because we have a very corrupt government that needs to understand it needs to get in line with the Western world where true democracy is exercised every day. I thank you, Mr. G. This is your brainchild, and I am very happy to be a member of this group, these professionals. It's a privilege, and I am here to support all the way. Thank you, and we will add anything later on. Appreciate that, Mr. G.
Yes, Command Sergeant Major retired Ralph Alcindor. I'm going to go over to former Ambassador Crispin Gregoire in a moment, but just before we do, there's two things I want to do, because former Ambassador Gregoire will tell us that not only we asking, we'll be welcoming contributions, small contributions from Dominicans wherever are in the world and friends of Dominica, but I'm sure he will elaborate for us the proliferation of agencies and companies and corporations that we will be to appeal to once we have our 501c3 status, that will be go out there and try to find funds that we can assist whatever is happening in Dominica that meets with our objectives of the organization. But before I let Command Sergeant Major Ralph Alcindor go, I mean, obviously you listen to him and he spoke about the strategy and so on. This is a military man. Now, we see what's happening in Afghanistan right now. Who better to understand what's happening there than Command Sergeant Major Ralph Alcindor? He's group he was probably one of the first commanders to be in Afghanistan. Maybe he can come back and tell us a little bit about it, because he saw firsthand, and we do not want anything like that happening in our island. Command Sergeant Major, maybe you can tell us a little bit, a couple of minutes, but what you experienced over there in Afghanistan and how you see things there today, and really what lessons you see there for us in Dominica.
Mr. G, let me say to you, when I see what is happening, I am heartbroken. And you were correct. I was the very first in April of 2002 sent to Afghanistan with the Army, the U.S. Army largest aviation battalion, 741 1st Aviation. We control the Chinooks that you see that goes back and forth from Kabul International Airport, ferrying people to the plane. I am hurt because we put in a lot of resources. Almost 3,000 or 2,500 of our men lost their lives. Over $2 trillion spent training Afghans and giving them all the resources they need in order to help. The unfortunate thing is we went on a mission. In my time when we did go there, we were out there to get Osama bin Laden and to get rid of Al-Qaeda. Well, that was done 10 years ago. I think it was May 2nd, 2011, Osama bin Laden was killed. But the mission mushroomed to something else. Like we always do wherever we go, we would like the people in the host country to be like us. Very difficult task to try to get the Afghanistan people to be like us. As you see now, it is evident that they are happy, they are getting everything. We're going to leave millions or billions of dollars worth of equipment, aviation and other assets. It breaks my heart to see my comrades who are now double amputees, triple amputees with all kind of metal in their heads and all of that. They are at home today and they're seeing that their work was done in vain. And I do understand that, and that is why I am hurting. I believe that Afghanistan has moved back 20 years within a span of about a month. Of course, it's all politics, and we know why everything is the way it is. Hopefully, Mr. G, the people of Afghanistan we have moved over to this side of the world will understand, and they will continue on a crusade for change in their country. Another important facet that really hurts me is the treatment of women under the Taliban. We saw what the Taliban did, and we know what they can do, and we expect them to do the same as soon as we completely out. I really don't know. I am hurting for what is happening, but my commander-in-chief and the one before him, we know what happened. And as far as I'm concerned, we have sold the Afghans to the Taliban. Hopefully, we expect them to understand the world is watching them and they must do right, because we are not going to let them get away with any atrocity against their own people. That is just my take, Mr. G. I'm hurting, really. As a veteran, I am.
Well, yeah, thanks a lot for that. For, I mean, obviously, you can see, I want you to share that, because what I want to show is that the people that we have on this board, on this panel, have a wide range of experience, and there's so many lessons that we've been learning from what we've seen in other places, mistakes that have been made. Certainly, there are lessons from Afghanistan, the treatment of women. We want to ensure that there's no abuse of women. We have all kinds of incidents, which I'm sure that we will talk about later on, because we want to try to eliminate those kinds of incidents, that kind of abuse of women, and so I want to go over now to Ambassador Crispin Gregoire, so he can make his contribution. Ambassador Gregoire, if you would turn on your mic, I believe, yeah, you can go right ahead.
Yes, okay. Good evening, Chairman of the board, Sheridan Gregoire. Good evening, fellow board members. I'd like to say good evening to Dominicans at home and abroad, all those listening to Q95. Let me salute Grand Bay, South City, and the Kalinago territory. And I want also tonight to recognize my hero, who is from Grand Bay. His name is Philip Francis, a revolutionary Philip Francis, aka also known as UNICEF. I think that UNICEF is one of the champions of human rights in our country for the last 70 years. And we have to cherish this man who is still alive in Grand Bay. He brought the plantocracy to an end in Grand Bay, and that's a significant feat that nobody has achieved, especially in the post-emancipation period. You know, tonight is a historic night. And let me say that as someone who has been involved in the affirmation of human rights my whole life, it was an honor and a privilege when asked to serve on the board to say, yes, I will be on that board. I will serve on that board. And the reason why it's important that such organizations like Nature Island Civil Liberties Foundation emerge, it's sort of an affirmation of civil society development. So that this is significant in that our people who left Dominica, who see, whether they're in New York, whether they're in London, whether they're in Toronto, or in St. Thomas, or in Guadeloupe, Dominica is part of their being. And consequently, if Dominica is part of your being, then you want to ensure that Dominica is safe and Dominica is secure. I have to say that I just came back from Dominica. I haven't spent, you know, since 1989, I go to Dominica every year, sometimes 3-4 times a year. I never stay more than a month. This time I stayed three months. And I think I got my soul back in Grand Bay. I got my soul back in Kalinago territory. And although because of COVID, I couldn't travel that much in the country, it was a phenomenal learning experience. I listened, and I listened. I would say, to start off, that Dominica has a constitution in which is enshrined the fundamental rights and freedom that come from the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. That first part of our constitution spells out those rights. And one of those rights is freedom of assembly, the right to assemble, the right to protest, the right to criticize the government. All of those things are in the Constitution. These are rights. These are our fundamental rights. But it seems to me over the last 15 years that there's been a concerted effort to trample on the rights of Dominicans, especially those that don't support the ruling party. This is really, I think we are going backwards. When I think that we are 42 years as an independent country, we are actually going back to sort of the colonial order, where we much rights, not even in the right to independence as a nation. We got that in 1978, thanks to the founder of our nation, Patrick John, the late Patrick John, who passed away recently while I was on island. And I know that he hasn't gotten his due recognition, because I think he's a phenomenal figure in our political history. Forget May 79. Think of all that the man achieved. Our country, Dominica, is premised on the rule of law. And it seems to me that rule of law these days is an afterthought. We have seen politicians disrespect our Constitution without the respective consequences that should come with that. And I hope that as we move forward, that we will make politicians respect totally the Constitution of Dominica. it is fair to say that there are many cases of human rights problems on Dominica, as highlighted by recently, last year, by the UN Human Rights Committee. And they highlighted many things, and I want to mention some of them because I believe that Dominicans are not totally clear on all of these violations of human rights that's going on in our country. I cannot elaborate on all of them tonight, but I will give you a sampling of what I see as really problems we have. The first one is the flouting of election laws and the total refusal by the Electoral Commission to undertake much needed electoral reform so that we can have a free and fair election. We haven't had a free and fair election since 2009. Second, police brutality towards political opposition. I want to flag that because the Human Rights Committee's headline was that police brutality has gotten out of control in Dominica and needs to be addressed. We have had political opposition people harassed and attacked by the police, and we have seen extrajudicial killings, like my colleague mentioned. I mean, we just had a case recently of another killing by the police, and unfortunately, I say unfortunately, he's facing manslaughter charges when that's a claim it's worse than that. Then we have frequent use of states of emergency. The Human Rights Committee lists 20 instances of state of emergency in Dominica in the last 20 years. There is inadequate accountability of public finances and the refusal of the government to come clean with the finances of the CBI. We have violence against women, including very egregious behavior against indigenous women. And high officials have committed crimes against indigenous women, and that has to be addressed. The UN World Conference on Indigenous People, which I had the honor and pleasure to organize, in that outcome document that I prepared and the states agreed on, we said that violence against indigenous women is a no-no. And I'm sad to see that it's happening in my country. And coming from officialdom, that's really a travesty. Then we have the lack of a human rights machinery in Dominica so that we can vent our concerns about human rights. There is no recourse in Dominica for when you have concerns about human rights. We have environmental degradation going on. And worst of all is the total disrespect by the government for environmental impact assessments of public projects, like the geothermal program, like the Moroccan Hotel in Portsmouth, like the Kempinski. Have this government ever tabled environmental impact assessments? The Kempinski is built in the mangroves forest of Dominica. I've never seen an environmental impact assessment. Then there's the problem of the right to fair trial and independence of the judiciary in Dominica. In fact, the case recently that came from the Caribbean Court of Justice, I have some real concerns of how that was implemented, and for the director of public prosecution, the acting director of public prosecution, she doesn't even have the substantive post to decide to end that case. She doesn't have any authority to do that. And freedom of expression, assembly, and association under attack. I myself have been in a protest for electoral reform where the Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force used tear gas on us. Freedom of expression, assembly, and association is under attack. Participation in public affairs has become partisan. If you don't belong to the ruling party, there is no place for you to participate in public affairs in this country. And secondly, after being in government for 20 years, you can well expect that corruption has become endemic, and that is real in Dominica. What about the rights of the indigenous Kalinago? We have an outdated law that was passed in 1978. Since then, and particularly during the time I was at the UN, I was very active in ensuring that the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People is passed. That was passed in 2007. This is 2021, and the government has refused to update the laws dealing with the Kalinago territory and the Kalinago people. I simply ask that we bring that law in line with the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And thirdly, I want to say about this foundation, the NICLF Foundation, that it has great possibility to contribute to a few things. One of them, greater advocacy for human rights in Dominica. And I'm talking of international advocacy. That means that we are going to build, and we've already started to build, partnerships with human rights organizations like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Freedom House. The sky is the limit. We are going to build relationships with these organizations so they can focus on what the problems that Dominica, this little micro state of Dominica, is involved in many activities that are really injurious to the international community. We will make very close connections with the UN Human Rights Council and the UN Human Rights Committee. And further, we will be in touch with the High Commissioner for Human Rights of the UN, based in Geneva. She was the former president of Chile, Ms. Batchley. We will be in touch with her. Now, let me say there are other organizations that we are already in touch with, and we're going to continue to build. We have the OAS, the Commonwealth Secretariat, and not, when I say Commonwealth Secretariat, I'm not thinking specifically of the Secretary General. I'm thinking of the group of countries that make decisions, the political committee of the OAS, of the Commonwealth, sorry. That's who we're going to have relations with. And of course, we will involve CARICOM, because we have to let CARICOM know what the concerns are in its neighborhood. I want to conclude by saying just three things to the listeners tonight. And that is, if I were to ask you, what can you do, you the listeners to this program and the people who will see the value of the NICLF, the Nature Island Civil Liberties Foundation, I want you to become familiar with human rights violations in Dominica. And one way of doing that is I want you to, those of you who really want to learn a lot about these human rights questions, simply go to the Human Rights Council of the UN and look for its reports on Dominica. Go to the UN Human Rights Committee and read the reports they have written on Dominica. It'll be a revelation of what's there. Then I want you to make alliances with human rights advocates in Dominica for addressing the erosion of human rights. And finally, I want you to consider, you people out there, to give financially to NICLF to help it protect human rights and civil liberties in our beloved country, Dominica. I believe that we are on the cutting edge of a new dispensation. We are not going to be cowards. We are not going to, because the police wants to intimidate you in Dominica, then you hide. No. Those of us who can speak, we will speak. And I think the time has come that Dominica is sliding into dictatorship and it must be arrested. Thank you very much for having me tonight. Bye.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for that, former Ambassador Crispin Gregoire. Your experience in dealing with all those international agencies, I'm sure, and the contacts that you've made over the years will be very useful to this organization. And I know that other of our board members also have had some contacts as well with many international agencies. And I think we will all try to bring to bear whatever this, what we can call, what my friend Dr. Dion George likes to call social capital, that we can build and bring to bear to help Dominica. Gabriel Christian is the last board member that I want to address us. But before I go to Gabriel, because I know that Gabriel, you can see we're beginning to talk about specific issues now. And I know that Gabriel will raise some specific issues that we'll want to open for discussion. And I'm sure that after that, Dr. Dion George and Dr. Irving Andre, a number of specific, after that, we're going to go into specifics and we'll open the discussion among ourselves so we can look at what kind of recommendation solution, how we can collaborate with affiliates in Dominica and elsewhere to bring some solutions to bear on some of those things that we'll be talking about. But before I go over to Gabriel Christian, before I ask him to open his mic so we can go over to him, I want to go over to our colleague, Darren Sylvester, who's out there in the UK. Darren, I know this is really an ungodly hour for you. I mean, it's a tremendous sacrifice, I know, for you to be up at this time. But because of your membership in the legal fraternity and what you're exposed to in the legal system, you've heard some of the issues that have been mentioned in a cursory way for now. I'm pretty sure we'll mention them in a more substantive later. But you heard about some of the human rights violations, things like police brutality. All those things dealt with in your neck of the woods in London. What advice would you have for us? And then how do you feel about this organization and what we're trying to do to protect the human rights and the civil liberties of Dominica? Would you think that you might be in a position to endorse this work that we're about to do? Darren, it's over to you.
Thank you, Sheridan, and good evening to the listening public in Dominica and the wider diaspora. Before I answer your questions, I think it's wise to start with the third verse of Dominica's national anthem. And from memory, it says, "Come ye forward, sons and daughters of this gem beyond compare. Strive for honor, sons and daughters. Do the right, be firm, be fair. Toil with hearts and hands and voices. We must prosper sound the call, in which every one rejoices, all for each and each for all." And that for me encompasses and encapsulates the NIDCLF Foundation and its aims, its stated objectives, because we are trying to help, support, guide, educate, inspire on a number of human rights and civil liberties topics. In England, or in London, in England, in the UK, we have, for example, the Equalities and Human Rights Commission. You can go on their website and Google it. And that may be something which the board may wish to consider. They do a lot of papers, they do a lot of reports, and it's been going in many guises. That's the latest guise. I'm pleased David is with me, fellow Londoner, because he will be able to hopefully support what I'm saying. It used to be the Commission of Equalities, and as I say, it's come in many guises. But over the years, they've done a lot of good work. We have a Human Rights Act in the UK, based on the European Convention of Human Rights, and it's present in statute book now, and many people can rely on it for freedom of expression, freedom of religion, right to a fair trial, and all the usual human rights points. In terms of the police, I'm pleased again David is here, but we have what's called now the Independent Office of Police Complaints. You may want to look at that website and get some hopefully hopeful ideas. But in essence, that is where you make a complaint against the Metropolitan Police or any police force in the UK if you feel that you've not had the right treatment or they've not investigated your case. A good example would be the Stephen Lawrence murder back in 1993. Only fairly recently were two people convicted after many, many years. And the McPherson report suggested that there was, I'm just trying to think of the wording at this late hour in the morning, institutional racism, that's the word. The McPherson report suggested that there was institutional racism in the Metropolitan Police in the way they investigated the Stephen Lawrence murder in 1993. And as I say, that's also gone through many guises and many revisions, but it's quite a useful tool. In terms of police brutality, you know, it's happened in this country, it's happened in the United States with George Floyd. Once you're in the custody of the police, you should not really die in their hands or in the custody cell or in the prison cell. You should go through due process. You should be arrested, if necessary, charged, and if necessary, face a fair trial. There shouldn't be abuse of power. No one is above the law, and no one should abuse their power. But I see this foundation as a positive step, because I've said on your program before, Sheridan, on Q95, that I think many people are lacking in the knowledge of the Dominica Constitution, the knowledge of their rights, the knowledge of their abilities to seek and find legal advice, sometimes for free pro bono, sometimes for a fee. And we have the effects of climate change, we have the effects of COVID-19, we have the effects of natural disasters. So you may say, how does all this link in with rights and freedoms and responsibilities? And they do, because in many guises, you only have to have a natural disaster and people are at sea or adrift. They're in a space where they need help and support. They can't always get it. Phone lines are down, internet is down, and they can't communicate in the way they would. And their rights, that's the time when their rights are at the most vulnerable. COVID-19, we're seeing now people vaccinated and unvaccinated. There are merits on both sides, but there shouldn't be discrimination because someone chooses not to get vaccinated. We all have our views. We have to try and educate and inspire and motivate. But I can see potentially, even in this country, in London, there's discrimination about those who are vaccinated may be able to go to the cinema and go on cruises and go on holidays, and the unvaccinated may not be. Now, potentially there is discrimination there, and we have to be careful of people's rights and freedoms, because discrimination is one of also the key traits of human rights. You know, you mustn't discriminate against people who are homosexual, people who take different views to you, you know, people of race, religion, creed, sexual orientation. These are all things that are part of the human rights fabric. And so I see huge potential in this initiative, and congratulations to you, Sheridan, for being the brainchild and the board that have agreed to come and support it. When you and Gabriel asked me if I would, you know, support it and raise the flag for it, I unhesitatingly said yes, because I think it's needed. It was alluded to by, I think, the retired major or someone, that we are 42 years, in November will be 43 years of independence. And in some respects, it's good that we are doing this now, but in some respects, why was it not done many years ago? Maybe it wasn't needed many years ago, but in my view, it's long overdue, and hopefully we can build on capital to link with international organizations, raise funds, dedicate support where it's needed, and I say engage, empower, educate, inspire knowledge, and let the foundation grow from strength to strength. But there's a saying, on a journey of 100 miles, the most important step is the first. And tonight we're making the first step, and I congratulate you and the board members for its initiation. And with those few words, I thank you for having me, and I wish the foundation much success.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for that, Darren. I'm going to go over to Attorney Gabriel Christian very shortly. So yeah, his mic is on already. Before I go over to you have some calls, because we have a lot of people here who speak very well, and we have a lot of people that would like to speak. So we hear you're sick, so they want to speak, want to say and if you don't speak, take some calls, we might not get your calls in. And I also want to ask a little later, Dr. Simon, to go back to persons on Facebook to acknowledge them and take some of the comments. Now, you want to give out the calls now very briefly and see if you want to take a couple of calls?
Yes, I will. We have The numbers again are 449-3095-9697, 616-4257, 305-432-9624, and we are taking your calls right now. Again, the numbers 449-3095-9697, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. Open for your calls right now.
And while we are with the calls, Mr. G, if I can acknowledge the Facebook viewers.
All means.
Yes, and just a reminder that if you joined us late, you are listening to and viewing on Facebook Live the official launch of the Nature Island Dominica Civil Liberties Foundation, a foundation dedicated to preserving democracy, preserving human rights, being the gatekeepers of democracy and human rights in Dominica. So we're very happy that you're joining us this evening. And just one quick point, Mr. G, while we're waiting on the calls, we also must remember that in addition to monetary contributions, we're also looking for contributions by way of resources. Maybe there's folks out there who have resources in mind that we may not have thought of. As for example, we just saw Sylvester Darren present us with some resources that we can look into. So we just want everyone to know that in addition to monetary contributions, even if you cannot make a monetary contribution, we're looking forward to an all hands on deck approach. So what can you contribute to this organization? And of course, if you have any ideas, any suggestions, you can always email us at nidclf@gmail.com. So that email address again is nidclf@gmail.com. And Lambi, if we don't have any calls coming in, we will go ahead and take some comments on Facebook because we have a very lively Facebook audience and we want to thank them for being here. So I see Carl Kofi James is on the live. Juanita Prince, we want to acknowledge you and say good evening to you. Earl, we want to say good evening. He's watching from England, so he as well is very late joining us. Marilyn Pascal, she says good evening to Mr. G and all the panelists, especially my good friend, the distinguished Dr. Irvin Andre. Good program watching from Dominica. We also have Ezra Winston, and she says the sad thing is that things in Dominica are accepted as the norm. A judge in place for more than 10 years, acquiring Dominican citizenship, and the people accept until there is an overhaul of the judicial system. The police will continue to act like a militia, loyal to one man. So lots of great comments on the Facebook Live. We have Earl who says, I in that. I think we can always recognize the local language. David Joseph who says, some people view the police as evil. However, most will agree that it is necessary evil, if I must say so, because without the police, we would have total anarchy. This is not to say that there are some criminals hiding behind the badge and uniforms of the police department. So great comments coming in, and we want to thank everyone for their contribution. Let's take one more, Mr. G, before we continue. Ezra Winston, we also hope that the scope of NIDCLF will be broadened to include patriots from all walks of life to take back our country, Dominica. Remember, there is no revolution without peasants. So we want to thank everyone for their excellent contribution on the Facebook Live, and we continue to encourage you to continue posting those messages and continue to share the live as we continue with the program.
Yes, and thanks a lot, Dr. Simone, for acknowledging our folks on Facebook. Glad to have you with us tonight. All of you are listening wherever you are. Just before I go to Attorney Gabriel, ask him to turn on his mic. Well, it is on already. I just wanted to again thank Eric Sylvester for the comments that he made tonight. I'm happy that you're here with us, and especially for the fact that you are already beginning to, as Dr. Simone said, identify resources because you can see we need to interact with organizations so that we have a we do protect our democracy. And there's no limit to how much of that we would like to have because it's important. I mean, no man is an island. So who are we as small Dominica to think that we can have a little thing here? I mean, we have to look at the entire world for resources that can, because we don't have the experience that some of these organizations have. What you're exposed to in England, many of us in Dominica may not be exposed to. What David Michael may have already experienced. Some of our police officers may not have experienced that kind of mature system. So it's all good. Those resources and the resourcefulness is really essential for us. And I'm sure that our political scientist, Dr. Dion George, and Dr. Andrew will come to us later on and talk a little bit more detail. But now I want to go over to Attorney Gabriel Christian to make his contribution to that. Gabriel, over to you.
A blessed good evening to you, Brother Sheridan. A blessed good evening to Sister Simone Matthew, Brother Irving, Brother Finn, our Command Sergeant Major Alcindor, our Master, Brother Crispin, our indomitable former Scotland Yard Chief of Detectives, David Michael, or Barrister, Brother Darren Sylvester. I just want to give a warm salute to Irving for all that he's done, Brother Dion George, Superintendent of Police and former Deputy Commissioner Nicholas George, a nation builder, a man of law and order, and all those who have sought to add their time and resources to this noble cause. I hope I've not missed out any of you, but know that I appeal to all of you, my fellow brothers and sisters, on this program with Brother Lambert and others in Master Control. I appeal to all of you to join with us, my fellow citizens, my Dominican brothers and sisters at home and abroad. Draw near and listen to this call to duty by members of your family, because that's who we are, all of us, blessed members of the Dominican family. We are your fellow citizens who have committed ourselves to service to our nation and the redemption of our best hopes of our struggle for independence. Let me remind you of a famous Dominican I heard mentioned by Brother Alcindor of, I believe, it may have been Benjamin Franklin or Adams, but I know Brother George also referenced Mr. Adams. But we have had some great Dominican leaders who've said things that are meaningful and inspiring. And I quote here from the independence hero of a sort and national hero of a sort, and his name you will get shortly, but he said at his resignation speech, quote, in 1966, when we were preparing the Constitution for Dominica, I tried to impress on the minds of the members of our party that we should seek to entrench a provision in the Constitution that no one should remain leader of the government for more than 2 consecutive terms. I remember advancing inter alia the point that the United States of America, through years of experience, have found it fit to restrict the continuous service of any one person as president for 2 consecutive terms, that a term was only 4 years and 2 terms would come to a maximum of 8 years. My plea fell on deaf ears. Those words were written by no less a person than the humble and modest hero of our nation, Edward Oliver LeBlanc, at his resignation speech. He went on to state as follows, and it's worthwhile for us to listen to his words as they call us now from the dim recesses of memory. And I quote, no man is indispensable. And in a democracy, while the electorate may support a leader, most of them subconsciously resent the idea of one individual retaining his personal popularity for too long. It is simply human nature, fortified by an inherent fear that one may use subtle means, even in a democracy, to establish a dictatorship for one's personal advancement. The words of Edward Oliver de Blas, and Dominicans at home and abroad, my dear friends. This piece of his resignation speech should inspire us all to public service in the best way. And I quote, "At this stage, I wish to point out that today I have nothing more use of value than I possessed when I became Chief Minister of Dominica in 1961. By rough calculation, I have paid $40,000 in taxes over the years, paid $6,000 to the party in accordance with our rules and regulations, given 6 children other than my own an education, and assisted my fellow man in diverse ways. Listen carefully, Dominicans. My cash holdings at Barclays Bank are $56.33, at the Royal Bank of Canada, $25.07, nullified by an overdraft at Barclays Bank of $465. I have no life insurance for myself or my family. Those that I had were withdrawn at surrender value to settle my debts incurred on behalf of myself and my family and the cause of Dominica's development." Edward Oliver de Blas, his resignation speech. That comes from the biography, Edward Oliver de Blas, and the struggle to transform Dominica by one Irving W. Andre. My friends, know that all of us, as Edward Oliver de Blas was, are inspired by love of our people and dedication to the common good and the Commonwealth. So it's a great honor for all of us to address you this evening. Dominica is now a member of the Commonwealth family of nations. We are equal in status to any of its members. Dominicans, we have a rich legacy of freedom struggle, born of the sweat, blood, and tears of our heroic Negma War ancestors who fought to end slavery. My fellow Dominicans, you have the spirit of our valiant Kalinago warriors who fought long and hard to preserve Whitey Kabuli from the ravages of vicious colonial rule. We urge you tonight to rally to the cause of our island and the cause that was championed by our self-government advocates, or trade unionists, those who stood for human rights, and those who stood for civil liberties and democracy. We ask you to join this organization, which is not affiliated to any political party. We are non-partisan. We are a non-profit organization dedicated to the preservation of our constitutional democracy, national independence, and civil liberties, all of which are our birthright, born of long, arduous years of struggle. And that is why we have committed this evening to form this organization. We ask all Dominicans, without regard to party, to join us, as it is our responsibility to save our democracy and the liberties we hold dear. We aspire to remain a democracy, freedom-seeking, and freedom-loving member of the family of nations. We have formed this organization tonight as we are convinced that our island is witnessing the destruction of our democracy and the flaunting of our constitution. My fellow Dominicans, my brothers and sisters, dearly beloved, we reject the destruction of law and order on Dominica. We ask all Dominicans to jealously guard the rule of law. We reject with utter disdain the wanton use of our badge of citizenship, that is our passports, as a vehicle for a mob of mafiosi, banditti, thieves, money launderers, and rascals posing as Dominican diplomats. Why have we been brought to such a disgraceful place? My fellow Dominicans, we reject a one-party state culture on Dominica that requires our citizens to wear party colors to get favors or to obtain preference. We want on Dominica an equality of opportunity society, one in which our people are promoted based on their merit, not party affiliation. We reject the brutal oppression of the democracy advocates and ordinary citizens by some policemen. We embrace the good officers who uphold professional and unbiased duty. And we reject those policemen who commit illegal acts and violate the rights of all citizens to due process. My brothers and sisters, we reject political interference in our law courts so that cases against the government for bribery and treating and other lawless acts are dismissed without ever being brought before a judge. My fellow citizens, we reject any nation, in particular our beloved island, where a director of public prosecution in our government at this time, or any government in the future, behaves as a pawn of the party in power. We reject the use of the prosecutorial power of the state as a cudgel, a bludgeoning tool to be used by any government to obliterate any opposition to a lawless and corrupt system of governance. My fellow Dominicans, dearly beloved, we can all play our part, however insignificant, in our national affairs and in world affairs. We are now on our own in a big world, in which we are just one of many nations, some small, some medium-sized, and some large. Nobody is your boss, and you should be no one's slave. We are free men and women on Dominica, and we must defend our freedom at all cost. What use will be our independence, where our democracy is steadily eroded? What shall we transmit to our children in the future years? Many countries have ceased to exist due to the negligence of their people, the lack of commitment to democratic ideals, or where our people, or any people, have allowed themselves to be subject to corruption or the rule by one man or one party. Some countries have become totally disorganized, poverty-stricken, prey to anarchy and civil war because they've allowed for the erosion of the democracy. Let that not be Dominica's fate. The call we make tonight is to remind each and every Dominican, young and old, of whatever party, to stand firm in the protection and promotion of our democracy. I take this opportunity here to paraphrase the words of one of our greatest Caribbean heroes, Dr. Eric Williams of Trinidad and Tobago, who was an exemplary leader and a beacon of democratic leadership. He said, and I quote, "Democracy means much more than the right to vote, and one vote for every man and every woman of the prescribed age. Democracy means recognition of the rights of others. Democracy means equality of opportunity for all in education, in the public service, and in private employment. Democracy means the protection of the weak against the strong. Democracy means the obligation of the minority to recognize the rights of the majority and the obligation of the majority to recognize the rights of the minority. Democracy means the responsibility of the government to its citizens to govern in an open, transparent, and accountable manner. Democracy means the protection of the citizens from the exercise of arbitrary power and the violation of human freedoms and individual rights. Democracy means freedom of worship for all and the subordination of the right of any race or any one class to the overriding right of the human race and all classes in our society. Democracy means freedom of expression and freedom of assembly and of organization. All that is democracy. All that is our democracy, to which I call all citizens tonight to dedicate ourselves this evening as we launch this Nature Island Dominica Civil Liberties Foundation to protect our democracy. Today, our democracy is a hollow mockery and a gigantic fraud where it is based on one group's domination of all sectors of the society, elections that are not free and fair, and government that takes place in the darkness, where we do not know what is done on our behalf, when it's done, or how it's done. We reject any government that shows intolerance to others because of considerations of race, color, creed, national origin, or party affiliation. So, my friends, let us take this stand. Tonight, as one of the first acts of what we hope will be a nationwide movement of all Dominicans, of all parties, we ask that Dominica enacts a Public Information Act What is the Public Information Act? Government is required to act in the public interest. And as publicly spirited Dominicans, civic-minded, we ask for the enactment without delay by mass petition to our government of a Public Information Act that will allow us to know the following. Number one, we want immediate disclosure of the salaries of the Prime Minister, all his ministers, and their other emoluments and benefits. Number two, we want a disclosure of all the contracts on the houses, apartments, community centers, and clinics built by the government of Dominica and the monies spent on same and to whom. Three, we want disclosure of all contracts for all passport agents, wherever they may be around the globe. Four, we want disclosure of all income reported by all passport agents, wherever they may be all over the world. Five, we want the disclosure of all tax returns filed by the Prime Minister and his ministers before and during their term in office. Six, we want the disclosure of all tax returns of all passport agents, local and foreign. Seven, we want the disclosure of all terms of contracts with Montreal management on the airport that is being built, which was not put through public tender. Eight, we want disclosure of the MOU between Dominica and the People's Republic of China. Nine, we want disclosure of all contract documents between Roosevelt Skerritt, the government of Dominica, on the building of the State Palace, and also the building of the palace at Mont Bruce, where the Prime Minister is a resident. 10, we want disclosure of all contracts surrounding payment of any and all buildings owned by government ministers and the source of funds. My friends, the reason we need public information acts in all democracies such as Dominica is because the government is our servant, not our master. The government is supposed to act in the public interest. And so, if as members of the public we ask for information, it must be given to us. We must not be told it is none of your damn business. That is haughtiness, that is dictatorial, that is tyrannical, that is anti-democratic. Finally, I want to say that all of us have a duty to do our best for our country. All of us, therefore, must brace ourselves to our duties and serve our country's democratic heritage and the liberties we hold dear. I want to thank every one of you on this panel this evening and all within reach of our voices to hearken to the call and stand firm for your country, our beloved nation. We love our country and we shall do duty to our country. May God bless us all, and may God bless the Nature Island Dominica Civil Liberties Foundation. Thank you very much.
Excellent, Brother Gable. Thanks a lot for that. I mean, you can see the number of things that we have to reject. I mean, they're not good things. I mean, that is why St. Gabriel Christian is recommending that we reject them. I know that Dr. Irving Andre has a few things that he would like to add to that, because I believe that there's some specifics that we now need to go into, because Gabriel has started looking at some specific things that we need to do to preserve our democracy, to preserve and protect our civil liberties, to ensure the equality is there. I mean, Darren spoke about this commission that deals in inequality. In the UK, it is important for us to look at those things. So I want to go over now, and after I go over to Attorney Dr. Andre, I want to go after that to Dr. Dion George. But Dr. Andre, if you could unmute your mic, then give us some of your further thoughts on some of the specific. We've seen so many things happening in Dominica. We've mentioned some of them en passant. We saw the Salisbury thing where Gabriel mentioned about the passports being sold willy-nilly. I mean, we've heard about crooks and criminals having diplomatic passports and ending up in jail. You've heard about all these contracts that are untendered. We hear about projects go without environmental impact assessment studies. We hear about police brutality, and we hear about judicial killings. Maybe you want to add some meat to some of that, because as we go down, I think the people who are listening to us who want to support this organization need to get a further understanding of some of the things and the depth of things that we want to do in preserving our human rights and democracy in Dominica. Dr. Andre?
One of the existential issues facing Dominica today is the significance of the constitutional provision which dictate that funds raised by government, either through taxes, sale of state property, sale of instruments of citizenship, should ultimately be deposited in the consolidated fund. The question is, what is the meaning of that constitutional provision? To what extent is it being adhered to? And this is important because much of the discussion we hear on radio revolves around the fact that a significant amount of the net proceeds of sale of passport have not been deposited in consolidated fund. Co-conspirators have indicated in court documents that much of that money has found itself in mysterious accounts worldwide. To what extent can Dominica, as a democratic state, as a state which is governed by the rule of law, allow a potential violation of a central constitutional tenet? And the question is, why is it not the case that this state of affairs has not been challenged as yet? Perhaps it will soon be challenged. But we have courts, and yes, there's concerns about the adjudication of legal issues at certain court levels, but we do have a CCJ. And this is one of the most serious problems. This is one of the most serious issues confronting Dominica as a democratic state. To what extent can any state entity, any state agent be allowed to violate Dominica's constitution with impunity? To what extent can monies which belong to the Dominican people be used in a very arbitrary fashion, in a fashion where jobs are given without any tender, in a fashion where there is a blatant conflict of interest between those giving the jobs and those doing the job? How can we as a democratic society allow this sorry state of affairs to continue? It would not happen in any of the Caribbean islands. Why is it happening here? Why are we allowing it to happen here? So to the extent that this new organization has any legitimacy, it cannot shy from these issues which affect the very core of Dominica's democracy. What happens to the property of the state? What happens to the assets of the citizenry of Dominica? Who should be allowed to make arbitrary decisions regarding the disposition of those funds? To what extent should we allow, for example, the Public Works Department to be cast by the wayside and to be replaced by relatives of persons in government who are receiving untendered contracts to perform some key state function? In which other Caribbean country is that being allowed to happen with impunity? These are some of the issues which will confront this new organization. And it will face a crisis if it chooses, God forbid, not to deal with these problems in some meaningful way. There are numerous other problems. The question of protecting the individual rights of citizens. There is a legal aid fund, there's a legal aid council, but again, and it's not an indictment of the person who is in fact the legal aid council, but to what extent is the apparatus, the legal aid system, responsive to the needs of the people? How? What is the nature, what is the health of the system of laying private complaints in Dominica. That is a core tenet of a democratic or the legal system of any democratic country. To what extent is it permissible for a citizen who has a grievance, who is or has been either victimized and who's borne witness to a criminal offense, be allowed to file a private complaint if the DPP, for crass political reasons, choose not to? To what extent should we allow that to continue to happen? These issues must be challenged, and they should be challenged vigorously. And yes, we understand the challenges of the criminal justice system. We understand the challenges of the court system, but that should not deter us from seeking redress in cases which call for redress. And the question is, are we prepared to stand tall to take on these issues because they are significantly important to our future existence as a democratic country? Thank you very much.
And thanks a lot, Dr. Andre. I mean, because we are now at a point where we can open the discussions. Anybody can jump in now, and because I know that Gabriel has some more to say, I know that Ambassador Crispin Gregoire has more to say, but I want to go over to Dr. Dion George first, because Dr. Dion George, we've listened and we've been paying attention to what's going on in the region for years. We saw what happened in the 70s. We saw in 79 a lot of transformations in the region. We see what's happening recently in Haiti, in Afghanistan, in Cuba, you know, in many of these countries around. We see what's developing in some of the islands around us, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Antigua, and all the other islands. We heard about this Caribbean Spring. We do not want to have upheavals in Dominica. I think we want to avoid those kind of things. But then when we see some of the things that are happening, that some of the things that have been brought up here by Gabriel Christian and by Dr. Irving Andre, it's obvious that there are issues that need somebody's attention. Obviously, this organization will have to pay some attention to some of those issues and to pursue some of them to help in any way it can. Dr. Dion George, let me go over to you. You turn on your mic for some further comments from you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Gregoire. Even before I comment on the little hint you gave me here, I just want to make an announcement for those on Facebook and those listening by ear. I read that some persons who have been trying to donate wanting the website. And so again, I just want to repeat the website. That is www.nidclf.org. And once you are in, you can look at the top menu and you can see a page that says donate. And it's pretty easy. So I saw a few folks went in and it's painless. Thank you very much for your contribution. But to the matter at hand, I just want to start off by saying that, first of all, I want to thank God and the Holy Spirit for what seemingly is a very sober tone with every panelist tonight. I mean, it brings a sense of unity. I mean, after I listened to Dr. Finn spoke, and he spoke about being from La Plaine, and he said he feel emotional. You know, it reminded me of Nehemiah in the Bible. When the king saw how he looked so sad, the king says, "Why are you so sad?" And I think what had happened then was there was a disaster in his homeland country, and he was away. And so the king says, "What can I do to help you?" And to me, that's how I see our organization. I see it as persons with good heart wanting to go back and uplift our people. And when I listen to Mr. David Michael, very astute man of the law, says that the law is very clear. And then when I listen to Nicholas George and spoke of the oath that the officers take, you know, the beginning statement I made with reference to Benjamin Franklin, that if men were angels, then there should be no internal and external controls. I cannot help but think of what happened in Salisbury, sir. I mean, people say, well, when we're going to end with that discussion? It cannot end because we have not met any justice. And I bring it up because I recall very well my cousin, Mr. Shillingford, bleeding from live bullets. that is a cause of human rights violation. It's a cause for the need for reform of police, but it's also a cause for human rights in the context of what is often referred to as first generational human rights, which deal with political rights and civil rights. Because one must recall that the incident happened on the eve of an election. And so these things cannot be separated. And so the whole context of human rights must be seen on first generational human rights, like political rights and civil rights, but also on second generational human rights as well, which that would include livelihood. Mr. Gregor, the whole concern of a stimulus package, believe you me, this is enveloped in the discussion of second generational human rights. It really has to do with the economic needs of a people. We spoke of weather and hurricanes. That too has to do with second generation human rights. There are a lot of people in Dominica that's still under tarpaulins. What is the government doing to help that? What about the bus drivers? I mean, the vision of seeing that bus driver who was literally ganged up against, I mean, it's one of two things. One, either the police officers really need better training, and maybe better training of how to even constrain someone, because what I saw there clearly looked like was a gang fight, right? And so people saying, okay, so what is the point? Well, really and truly, if you look at the United States, for example, when they killed George Floyd and people started protesting, which is their right, which, by the way, we in Dominica have that very same right. You protest, you petition the government for what you want. All right. What happened in the US? There were a stream of reforms. There were educational programs in the Department of Police for de-escalation tactics, for example. There were other examples of the need to wear cameras when approaching a suspect, for example. And so what we are saying here is that the discussion, the mitigation, it brought policy changes that would benefit people's rights. And so, Mr. Gregor, when I look at the Nature Island Development, Civil Liberties Foundation, NIDCLF, I see the need for organization. I feel confident that people will support us. I feel energized. I see it as a breaking point, a new hope. And I mean, I have to give credence also to Crispin Gregoire, the array of violations that pointed out by the United Nations, specifically for Dominica. I mean, thumbs up to you. And of course, thumbs up to all of my panelists as well. Yes, sir.
Yes, Dr. George, thanks a lot for those comments there. I know that we'll take comments from anyone on the panel law because there's so much of this has been put out already. But as we think about what we want to jump in to say, let me just go over to Dr. Simone Matthew, because Dr. Simone, we do not want to totally, we want to engage our people on Facebook. We know they're listening and they're commenting. I want to ask you to open your mic and see if you can just address some of their comments on Facebook and acknowledge our followers there.
Sure, but before I do, Mr. G, let me also say that with this organization, we are leveraging the power of groups. So, for example, we're looking to collaborate with Moonsewe, NJAM, Concerned Citizen Movement. So it's about creating that momentum. We have many of the groups that are already doing the work on the ground, and we're certainly proud of their efforts. But this is almost like an umbrella organization where we can pull everyone together and have more of an asserted effort and create more direction so that we can create the necessary changes that we are seeking for Dominica. But again, we want to acknowledge everyone who's on the Facebook Live. We have Maslin, and she says there are diasporans who enjoy full democratic rights here in the US, but sabotage it for people in Dominica. And then we have Marilyn, and Marilyn says, you all are true patriots tonight. I commend you all for this new and great initiative in giving back to country. Distinguished sons of Dominica, you are really stepping forward as requested by a verse of our national anthem, "Come ye forward, sons and daughters." Anthony Simon is here. He says, thank you for your service. My Dominican brother, Augustina John. Augustina is watching from Canada and she's listening. Thank you for being here. David Joseph, after 20 years of protection by the Americans and billions of dollars spent training the Afghan military, not to mention the top quality military equipment given to these people, it is amazing that they did not absolutely nothing to defend their country. David, in the interest of time, I will have to cut your comment, but thank you for your feedback. Let's see who else we have. So we want to thank everyone for your wonderful contributions to the discussion this evening. Dion George, oh, that's you, Dion. Thank you for posting the information. Naomi, listening from Salisbury, Dominica. Rosalind Sevre, always great to have you on the program. Gina, always have good conversation, interesting. Dee Esther, we may be cultivating a culture of intolerance right here on island. So whilst we are focusing on the unfolding development in Afghanistan, we must be careful we don't have a complete erosion of democracy in Dominica. Certain individuals are exhibiting Taliban tendencies. We'll have to cut your comments, Didi, but thank you for that comment. So lots of great feedback on the Facebook Live as always. Marshall, greetings all. Surely I did not know that aspect of the first premiere. Owen Prosper, loving the program tonight, always locked. Pat Aaron is on the Facebook Live. Mr. Pat Aaron, thank you for being here. It's been a long time coming. Now I feel we are turning a corner in our fight to protect our democracy in Dominica. Let's all put our shoulders to the wheel and put our money where our hearts and mouths are. Let's save Dominica. As for me, I will do everything I can. Emma Daniel, good evening. And Dominic, good evening. So lots of wonderful comments on the Facebook Live. Beverly Johnson, thank you for joining us. So we are truly grateful for the comments and the contributions of everyone who are joining us via Facebook Live, and we look forward to collaborating with you on this very important initiative.
Yes, and I also I want to go over to Gabriel, but I want to first do this. You know, we're getting a lot of comments. One, I know that Nicholas George here has somebody from Grand Bay, I think, already is asking for Darren Sylvester's contact number in the UK. It looks like there's something happening there with you, Darren, and somebody's trying to get, so I believe we'll arrange for them to get some contact information for you to see what good can come out of this. Also, I have a comment from Corinne Francis, who is over there in California. She says this is a kind of organization and people on it absolutely much needed as a civic organization to bring professional and strategic focus to our fight for democracy in Dominica. I'm giving you all you guys your flowers right now. Kudos and thanks for all of you to all what you do to champion democratic rule and anti-corruption in Dominica. You know you have my fullest support, and I will contribute financially. So
and let me just add one more comment, Mr. G, because I think it's important. Marcelin says no more standing aside and look while democracy in Dominica is being eviscerated. That little piece of rock, the land of our birth, is everything to fight for because it is ours that our ancestors paid for with their blood, sweat, and tears, which were the ultimate sacrifices. So I think that kind of sums up very nicely why we are here and why we are doing this program.
Yes, Gabriel, I thought that I saw your hand up. You wanted to jump in and say something. Just make sure your mic is open so that you can speak.
I just am very moved to be part of such a illustrious gathering, to see Sister Matthew, who represents the best of our womanhood. Our women have carried us. Of course, we all know they carried us for 9 months. Many of them carry us after 9 months and still. And I just want to say how important it is for us to understand something called state capture. What is state capture? First of all, I want to give thanks to Brother Dion George for bringing in his youthful ebullience and to remind us of our better selves. And I want to also, in this moment, remember people like Brother Nicholas George, who worked hard to help our youth get to a better place and is now facing the prosecutorial venom of a state gone wild. But state capture, what is state capture? And I ask all of you this evening, class, those of you listening, take your notebooks out. And I didn't write this, it's online on Wikipedia. State capture is a type of systemic political corruption in which private interest significantly influence a state's decision-making processes to their own advantage. It goes on to say the term was first used by the World Bank around the year 2000 to describe the situation in certain Central Asian countries making their transition to democracy. And it talks about state capture being applied as a designation where small corrupt groups used their influence over government officials to appropriate government decision-making in order to strengthen their own economic positions. State capture, therefore, leads to the creation of a morally repugnant elite, an oligarchy, a tight group of family and friends who create an opaque web of networks to govern the state in their own personal interests and for their personal aggrandizement. That is where we are. That is why we struggle. That is why we're here, to ensure that Dominica does not any longer continue to be captured by that sort of morally repugnant elite to the disservice of the common good, the commonwealth, and contrary to what is in the public interest.
Yes, thanks a lot. Anybody can jump in now. I mean, because we just want to share Dr. Andre Crispin, Ralph Sergeant Major. You know, you can just, yes, if you want to come in, Command Sergeant Major, come in, just unmute your mic so that we can hear you. Okay, so if you're going to take a moment to unmute your mic. Okay, yes, you're unmuted now. Go right ahead.
There is a component that we did not talk about. Any of the panel, I didn't hear them talk about. It's a goal that you and I, we chat about it, and that is education. This organization, the foundation, I am quite sure will be ready, and we advocate helping the underprivileged with scholarships. And I know this is something that the people will be happy to know, that we are ready and able to give scholarships at the elementary level towards high school for the time being. But once this foundation is fired on all 8 cylinders, I am certainly sure that we will be happy to give aid and help the young, poor folks, promising students in Dominica. So that in itself will enhance what we are about. We are not only about democracy and good governance, we are also about education for the poor and help as much as we can with this organization. Again, I thank you for being a member of this group where we all focus on a better Dominica with real democracy, where rights are respected at all times. Thank you, Mr. G, and thank you all the panel members. We look forward to continue working. It is a work in progress. I am certainly sure we will have many jumping on board because they realize this is it, the real foundation to move Dominica forward and get recognized on the world stage. Thank you, Mr. G.
Thanks a lot, Ralph. And I just want to acknowledge already that some people are beginning to indicate their interest in contributing. One person has told me, don't disclose my name, but I will be going on the website tomorrow and donating $1,000 to this cause. So I would encourage you, anybody who wants to make a donation, no matter small or large, whatever it is, whatever you have, if you'd like to contribute to this, just go to the NIDCLF.org, go to the website, click on the donate button, and you can make a donation right there. I'm sure it will go to a worthy cause. And once we have our certificate, confirm that for the 501c3 status, you will be able to then get a tax rebate on that, even if it's not there yet, but you will be entitled to it. So rest assured. So that is the reason why, for example, we will be tackling some large corporations to see what they can donate as well, because they too would have the opportunity to get the tax rebate from this. Did you want to say something now, Dr. Andre or Crispin? Dr. Andre, if you want, yes, Dr. Andre.
Yes, I was just, before I say something, one of your callers or one of the persons on Facebook is a distinguished Dominican in her own right. Her name is Marilyn Pascal. He has a very intriguing family history. Perhaps one of the few people in Dominica as we speak who speak Papiamento fluently. That's because her background is in Curacao, where her family migrated in the late 40s or 50s and returned. But I just wish to use this platform to indicate to her that I do have a package of documents for her, and I will give my name, my number, local number, I should indicate, 295-7958. 295-7958. Now, the Sergeant Major has made reference to the fact that we haven't, at least this evening, spoken about education, but there are other goals that we haven't spoken about. However, the fact that we haven't doesn't make them any less important. It's just that we have certain time constraints. The whole question, for example, of the environment. We know that there is a rather strong environmental movement in Dominica. There's concerns about the rivers. There are certain environmentalists who have carried the torch of preservation of these natural resources with very little assistance, and we hope at least to assist in that regard. There is the whole question of preservation of our architectural heritage. The fact of the matter is, unfortunately, in the last 5 years, probably more, we have seen, quite frankly, a total negation of our architectural heritage. We have seen a destruction of important architectural edifices, and quite frankly, ignoring some of our most important edifices, such as, for example, the old Carnegie Public Library, which stands or bears mute testimony to the degree of neglect that we have exhibited towards this important part of our heritage. And hopefully we can play and we can align ourselves with groups, interest groups on the ground who've made it their business to agitate and advocate on behalf of our agricultural heritage. We hope to play our little part in the preservation of our cultural heritage. Local government, unfortunately, I think you need a whole program to talk about the decline and demise of local government in Dominica. And as I said, we certainly hope to play our part in that regard. I think there may be others who wish to say something, and I will stop at this point.
Yes, thanks a lot, Dr. Andre. I think Dr. Finn wants to say something. His mic is muted. I'll ask him to unmute his mic. And but certainly, yes, Dr. Finn, your mic is, but let me just say this before you go. I also want to acknowledge Marilyn Pascal, and thanks a lot for tuning in for your very warm comments. Appreciate that. All right, so Dr. Finn.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch upon the issue of term limits. I think that's really the heart of the matter. In America, there are term limits. After 2 consecutive terms, whoever is the head of state has to bow out to someone else. And if we don't have term limits, I think we're in trouble here. Now, right now, we have this judge from St. Kitts, who's retired judge, running around, listening to people. We are eager to see what kind of report he's going to issue at the end of all these running around. I call it running around. There's lots of rumors that he has been paid upfront a sizable sum of money and he's just, just playing around with people. Now, and there's reports that once he issues his report, which is going to be favorable to the current regime, we're going to take it to Parliament and rubber stamp it. I'll tell you one thing. Today, we're hearing rumors about what's happening to the power rep from La Plaine. There is no way, statistically or mathematically possible, that this current regime would win La Plaine. I've looked at these numbers closely for the last 4 election cycles without diaspora from New Jersey and elsewhere flooding the polls in La Plaine. People who haven't been to Dominica in 25 years all of a sudden, voting. So if we don't have electoral limit, if we don't have
Electoral reforms.
electoral reform, I think we're in trouble. And I'm eager to find out what this judge has, because that is the crux of the matter, And I think Dominicans, wherever they are, within the reach of our voices here, wherever they are, you don't have to agree with me. You just have to agree with Dominica. You don't have to be a member of any political party. Just be a member of Dominica. Care about its rivers, its hills, its parrots. I understand that at the end of the day, we need a new sense of order, a new sense of being. This nonsense must stop. If not, Haiti didn't have any electoral reform under Duvalier, and Haiti's broken. Libya didn't have any electoral reform under Duvalier, under Gaddafi. Libya is broken. Iraq didn't have electoral reform under Saddam. Iraq is broken. You can go down the list. Zambia didn't have electoral reform or term limits under this guy from the jungle, Mobutu. Zaire is broken. If we do not have term limits, we might as well go home early. And we are eager to find out what this retired judge has, running around talking to everybody. Running around talking to everybody, listening. What is his final report? That's it for me, really.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dr. Finn. I don't know whether anybody else, Crispin, anybody wants to jump in? And Crispin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think it has been really a rich evening of great thought, vision, and commitment to country. I've been in the political arena for all my life, and I've seen things that defy reason in our country. There are many ills that need to be addressed. I would like to see us have free and fair elections, and I can't wait to see an electoral reform agenda, complete comprehensive electoral reform, so we can have a free and fair election and bring Dominica back to a national consensus. That's one of the real dangers in our country. Our country has become a place where if you don't belong to the ruling party, then you are seen as a traitor. And politicians actually call you traitor if you don't support their party, the ruling party. But it was never like that. Our country was a country where all ideas contended. And we always agreed before 2009, we always agreed on the result of the election. And I always say to the people in power, if the opposition forces and supporters don't accept the result of a fraudulent election, then that election is in question and there is no consensus. Dominica, for it to move forward, must have a national consensus. And the only way to have a national consensus is to have a free and fair election going forward. I'm saying if the next election is not free and fair, that may well be the bottom that we will fall to. And when we get there, it's not going to be easy to bring it back. I always remember the late Kofi Annan, the late Secretary General of the UN. And one way he described the UN was that it had reached a fork in the road. And you know, when you reach a fork in the road, there are two places to go. One is to the abyss. You get into the quicksand of political instability, or you become a democratic country and recognize that no one man has all the answers to our country. The way Dominica's government has operated the last 15 years, as though the opposition doesn't matter. And when I, you know, it was really disgusting for me to listen and hear what transpired in our parliament a few weeks ago, when the opposition representatives were malhandled by the police. I think the police is overstepping their bounds. Armed police should not be in the parliament where laws are made. And it is time that the Commissioner of Police does a reality check. Mr. Commissioner, I want to address you tonight, and I want to say to you, you need to get out of the realm of politics. You are not a politician. You are not a political activist of the ruling party. And so the high command of the police is behaving as though that they are the military wing of the Dominica Labour Party. That is not what we desire in our country. We want to have a country where we have all ideas contend. And even though people are at variance with the ruling parties, that is not a reason for you to arrest people. When I think of Nicholas George facing charges, for what? For his free expression, which is guaranteed in the Constitution? I think that we've reached a point of no return. And if we're not careful, we'll head to a civil war. And that's what I'm afraid of. I don't want Dominica to end up in a civil conflict. And I can say without any reservation, we are very close to that. We better sober up. Dominica is on a knife's edge. And if it continues the way it has been going in the last 5 years, it will lead to a conflict, an armed conflict, that is. And we don't want to go there. I've seen many countries where armed conflict became the reality because the ruling party did not want to yield and subject itself to democratic accountability. I'm saying to Mr. Skerritt and his government tonight, with no reservation, that, sir, you are on the wrong course. And if you continue on that course, you're going to lead Dominica into a civil conflict. Stop it. And that's all I have to say. Good night.
Marlon, thanks a lot for that, Crispin. You know, I'm getting some comments there from some persons. They say they love what they're hearing and they're right on board with it. You know, I know that many comments, Gabriel. I know that Dr. Andre has some comments, but I recognize that, you know, Darren Sylvester is here with us, and really and truly he's here by choice. But I mean, the fact of the matter is he's under some kind of duress, because I mean, for you to be up so late at night, I'm sure you have to go back to work tomorrow, Darren. So I wanted to give you, as before we close, I wanted to give you an opportunity to make some, you know, further comments if you wanted to make some further comments. So you need to turn on your mic so you can do that.
I'm going to say good morning because it's 3:03 a.m. in London, so I'm saying good morning.
Exactly.
No, just to say I've listened with interest to all the contributions. I'm excited by the development of the foundation and what it has to offer. I've sent some links around for us all to cogitate upon: the Equalities and Human Rights Commission link, the Independent Office of Peace Complaints. We have in the UK a Freedom of Information Act, which is legislation that Gabriel was alluding to about Public Office Act. And so all these we can look over and try and introduce in due course. But it's been enlightening, it's been engaging, it's been interesting, and I'm excited for the future. Those are my summing up conclusions.
Well, yes, Darren, and basically what it means really is that the work is just beginning. Tonight is the launch. So tomorrow we go to work, right?
That's
so
right.
Tomorrow we can contacting all these people that we're talking about, developing these relations and building this social capital in order to you know, to source and get a hold of those resources that we know are available out there to help in what we're trying to do in Dominica with democracy, the human rights and civil liberties, and removing the abuse and the corruption and the brutality. And let's face it, what has happened to Nicholas George should never have happened to him. I heard what he said. He was merely giving some advice to the police, good advice at that. I think they should have taken it in a nice way instead of arresting him and placing charges against him. That's really bad. It's not a good sign at all. But I know that Dr. Andre, we're winding up and we're getting close to just calling it a night. I know that you have some final thoughts that you wanted to share with us.
Yes, I do, and hopefully I'll be brief as usual. Not sure about that, but anyway. Look, much has been said by the panelists this evening, by callers, by persons on Facebook, and we have to all take it to heart. But if I may borrow a line or two from Sir Winston Churchill, I don't borrow too many lines or two from him, but I will this evening. And I think he indicated in his famous speeches during World War II that he had nothing to offer but blood, oil, tears, and sweat. We have some him, however, we have our patriotism. And let me end by quoting a song which we grew up with. It was very popular then, not so popular today, but the words continue to resonate with us and hopefully to inspire us. The name of the song, if I recall, is My Own Dear Land. My own dear land, where'er my footsteps wander, ever to thee my heart still turns again. To thee my love grows ever fonder, fonder, till in its might it is akin to pain. Ever to thee am bound in love and duty, no dearer land to me in all the earth. By all sweet ties of home and love and beauty, to thee I cleave, their land that made me what I am today. And to the extent that we can reflect on those memorable words, half the battle would be won. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Dr. Andre. And in the meantime, Lavinia in Bath Estate has said, listen, I'm loving every word that I'm hearing, and I'm totally on board with what you all are doing. So I just wanted, Nicholas George, anything you wanted to add to any of this before we go? So you can unmute your mic.
Before he does, let me just
Yes.
shout out my cousin who's recently published a book. Is Rosalind Severin, somewhere in New York, I believe. And let me thank her for gracing us with her presence this evening. Thank you.
And I think Dr. Simone mentioned her as one of the persons who were here with us on Facebook. So yes, I mean, so let us shout out to Rosalind as well. Nicholas George?
Yes, I have listened well, and Captain Gabriel, for those who don't know, that is the title by which he goes, as far as I'm concerned. We had our run-ins as well in the development of our youth. We both grew to understand each other. Dominica is in a very bad state, a very bad way, a very bad place presently. And the police, unfortunately, they have gone away from the oath that they swore to. They've gone away from section 12 of chapter 1401, which is their duties spelled out. And I'm talking about the leadership, really. And they need to stop the direction that they're going into and take a 180-degree turn and get back on course so that they can peacefully lead us in Dominica and bring peace to Dominica. If they don't, we will be in trouble. The ruling government need also to take heed. There are small things happening. We are in a COVID state now. About 600 confirmed active COVID cases. Requests have been made for the government to issue a stimulus package. The government has refused. And in the face of having so many people go without bread, without work, the government in broad daylight issues care packages to selected people in Dominica in our faces. If that is not annoyance, I do not know what constitutes the offense of provocation and annoyance. And this is paid for from money from Consolidated Fund 1. Consolidated Fund 2 and the Treasury number 2 has not been touched. But I want to make another plea, that with regards to our enablers and apologists in Dominica, Caribbean heads of state need to be called as well. I heard the foolish statement that Prime Minister Brown made about the plight of the Haitians. And I didn't like it. I do not respect it. I have absolutely no respect, no regard for that. Haiti lost 250,000 people in 2010 in the space of about 5 minutes. Millions were raised. Millions were raised to do the development of Haiti, the redevelopment of Haiti. And I would have thought that 2 countries in the Caribbean, Dominica and St. Lucia, should have been approached to provide technical people in engineering, architecture, law, policing, because we speak the language. Yes, the money came from Britain, from Germany, from France, but we could have assisted. I didn't hear anything about that. What I heard is that the migration of Haitian is a national security, a regional security threat to the region. The Caribbean leaders who authorized the RSS to come here on the 5th of December 2019 were all here at the inauguration of this corrupt regime. So I too do not have respect for Mia Motley. Sorry, I don't. Because she must have heard the cries of the people of Dominica, and then to come here and glorify a government like that and to give them standing is wrong. So I'm saying, I'm making a plea tonight that not only must we go at the apologists and enablers here, the permanent secretaries who have abdicated their responsibilities, those of them who have done so and know so, our commissioner of police and his supporting command, the lawyers here that have done that, the journalists who refuse to challenge the status quo. Together with them must come the leaders of Caribbean. Remember, that Mr. Linton paid his passage to go to Guyana and tried to make a case before the Court of the Caribbean, that is the sitting of the heads of government. He wasn't allowed to speak, and yet he was crucified in that same conference by every leader. And then they say that we should not interfere in the internal affairs of each other's country. Ladies and gentlemen, the Caribbean is my country. I am just happened to be from Coliho in the Commonwealth of Dominica, but the Caribbean is one country. The Treaty of Shagarama speaks to that. Caribbean Court of Justice speaks to that. The CARICOM Secretariat speaks to that. And if democracy is being eroded in one country, it should affect all. And we should all be speaking against the deterioration of democratic principles in Dominica. The failure for the dispensation of justice to the people of Dominica. The selective prosecution, the discriminative prosecution, the provocating prosecution of the people of Dominica who supposedly do not support the government is wrong, must be condemned wrongly. I will support the efforts to bring peace to my country. I make a commitment tonight. And Captain Gabriel, I heard you speak. please send me your expose. What you spoke of, if you didn't write it, then before you go to sleep tonight, please reduce it into writing and let me have it on my email so I can reflect upon it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much, my colleagues, for having given me the opportunity to be a member of this prestigious group.
Yeah, and thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Nicholas, for your closing remarks. I'm just going to take some closing remarks now. Command Sergeant Major Ralph Alcindor, you want to just make your closing remarks? I'm just going to, because you see the time has already overtaken us here. You want to open up your mic so we can hear you? You're having a little problem with it. Maybe I can go to someone else while you're trying to get your mic open. Well, let me go over to Dr. Dion George. So Dr. Dion George, you know, so Sergeant Major, you'll try to open up your mic and we'll get back to you in a minute. Dr. Dion George, your closing remarks?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to the panelists. Thanks to the folks who participated on Facebook. Thanks to the listeners. But most of all, I want to thank God. I want to thank God for putting these minds together. I want to thank God for you, Mr. Gregoire, for this initiative. And I want to appeal to all Dominicans, not just any particular party, to see the need for unity when it comes to, according to Sergeant Major, when it comes to education and sponsor kind of scholarships to students. There is no party color in doing that. I want to appeal to Dominicans when it comes to talking about human rights, particularly political rights. Today might be Salisbury, but tomorrow might be somewhere else. So I want the appeal to be that we want a better country for ourselves now. And of course, when the good Lord calls us for our children, let the Nature Island Dominica Civil Liberties Foundation be an appeal that Dominicans from all walks of life will see the utility in this organization and to support it. My heart is in it. I think it's almost celestial. I think it's a good calling to work for the downtrodden, to work for those who cannot defend themselves, to work for the poor. I am certain it's a noble cause, and I'm asking Dominicans to support us. Mr. Gregoire, thank you, and thank you for the listeners.
And thanks a lot to you as well, Dr. George.
Yes.
Are you with us
Can
now?
you hear me, Mr. G?
Excellent.
Yes, I'm good.
Yes, of course. We hear you.
Well, again, I thank you. I thank the panel members, the professionals, whether it's law, political science, psychology, whichever it is. We have a diverse crew here on board, and they are in support of what we are doing. I know it's a work in progress. We all have to band together and continue, be determined to ensure that our country gets on the right track. Thank you, gentlemen. It's a work in progress. We will continue, and we will definitely achieve what our goals are set for. Good night, and have a pleasant night, everybody.
And thanks a lot again, Command Sergeant Major Retired, for all of your work that you did in the military as well, all the work that you continue to do in your everyday life. I want to go over to Darren to see if Darren wants to make some closing remarks. Darren, before we leave, before we let you go to bed, might want to turn on your mic if you want to. Yep, go right ahead, Darren.
I think I said before, it's been enlightening, it's been educational. There's a movement to effect change and be inspirational for the people of Dominica to look at us as guiding forces. There's much to do. We've been highlighted on a few topics of, get my notes of freedom of information, police conduct, environmental affairs, independence of the judiciary, climate change. There's so much, and that's only just, not even going into the depths of things. So this foundation will have a lot of work ahead of it, but it's with motivation and inspiration that we will take the few steps on the journey and see where we go. But it's exciting times, and I think it's much called for and much needed. and we could be the beacon for other islands as well, because I'm not sure if other islands have anything like this. So we could be leading the way for other islands to maybe follow suit in due course. So I repeat that it's exciting, it's exhilarating, and I'm just pleased to be on this distinguished and illustrious committee. And well done to you, Sheridan, for being the brainchild of the project.
Thanks a lot, Darren. Sorry we had to keep you up so late. I want to go over to Dr. Simone, because you know she is the only rose among all of the thorns that we have here tonight. And we so value your comments here tonight. Yeah, you're certainly, I suspect that you intimidate all these many of all your thoughts, and the way you have been connecting with all of the persons who are with us on the social networks. I mean, I'm sure you'll take in your final comment, you'll want to say good night to them as well.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Mr. G. And of course, thank the panel and everyone who joined us via the radio and Facebook Live. And I just kind of want to piggyback on what Darren just said in terms of it being, work cut out for us. And it might seem an insurmountable amount of work to be done, but I always like to remind us that Dominica is not the 60 to 65,000 people on the island. It is the 60, 65,000 people on the island plus over 150,000 people in the diaspora. So when we put it all together and we see the massive amount of power, I mean, we've only been here for a little while and we can already see the amount of comments that came in on the Facebook Live and the amount of interest that this program has generated. So I just want us to continue to think of making that significant contribution, making a monetary contribution, but also contributing in whatever way that you can, because the interest of Dominica is the interest of all of us who love and care for Dominica. And of course, we have to take the final comments on Facebook before we wrap up. So we have Ilian Vidal, who's listening from New York. Detush Alfred is joining us from Guadeloupe. And of course, our prayers go out to everyone in Guadeloupe during this COVID crisis. Medina Senhouse, my mom, is with us. So we say good night and good evening to her. And we have Unica George. Thanks for putting the site up. Marshall, it is time that the electoral process be settled and established. And Emma Danielle, they have not been doing that. And we just keep saying we will be in trouble if we don't. Why are we still waiting on them? So I think she's just encouraging us to continue with the work. Anthony Simon, great panel, very interesting. And we could go on and on. So again, we want to thank the Facebook audience, Naomi Massacred, Ashby Scotland, Emma Frederick, thank you for joining us. And I think we can already see the interest, Mr. G. So I think we have to not only continue with the organization, but we have to continue the promotions. We have to come back here on Facebook. We have to engage our audience, because as you can see, I had to, to actually rush through the end because there's so many people who wants to make a contribution. So hats off to the panel. And again, good evening to everyone who joined us on this program.
Yes, Dr. Simone, and I'm pretty sure that people like Loftus and the guys on the hot seat and on all the other talk shows, they will probably be interested in contacting one or two of us, and they might want to get some comments from us to keep the discussion going. And I'm pretty sure that we will be doing promotions as we go along, so to ensure that we maintain contact with all of the people of Dominica at home and abroad, and the Friends of Dominica and all those international agencies that we hope to contact and build relations with. But let me just go over to Dr. Finn, maybe for his final comments. Dr. Finn?
Okay, yeah. So briefly, I just want to a couple things. Gabriel and I, when we were students at DGS, cadets, every Thursday we went over to the police station for our guns to match and for our shooting practice. And there was Inspector George, who we feared, who we respected so much, He was there and he was like, okay, he comes out with his gabardine uniform and okay, this is one of them. And so it pains me today to see the kind of treatment that you're getting from this very organization you gave your life to. It hurts. It hurts. I can only imagine what you're going through and what you've been, Commander George. But nevertheless, Christ went for more than that, you know. I just wanted to put this as a footnote. And the other thing I want to say to the people of Lapland, I've got many, many messages. Hang on there, Lapland. Hang on there over. Tomorrow will be a brighter day. You know, we deserve better. And last, but by no means least, listening to all the commentaries tonight, listening to all what we have said, it's just that Dominica has called his daughters home. And with this foundation, we have responded, we have answered. And I think that really encapsulates, you know, Dominica needs us, and she has called us, and we have responded. And this is what tonight is all about. And obviously, as Darren said, as Simone said, the work has just begun, but we have responded. She has called us. She needs us right now.
Yes, and thanks a lot, Dr. Finn, for that. I want to go over to former Ambassador Crispin Gregoire and ask him to unmute his mic so he can give us his final comments as we wrap up this evening. Crispin?
Yes, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really pleased with tonight. I believe that we're making a national statement here. We are basically, without any reservation, saying, highlighting, underscoring what the problems of human rights are in our country. And it's sad for me to just like chronicle the range of problems that we've had over the last 15, 16 years under this government. I believe that whenever rights are trampled upon, there is a reaction, and the reaction is that reaction is usually an angry response to diktat and erosion of rights. I believe that we are at a crossroads that we really have to address as a nation. Some people tend to bury their heads in the sand and say, oh, there's nothing we can do. I don't believe that. I believe that every problem has a solution. And Dominica has political problems that has been cumulative. It has built up over many years. What Gabriel alluded to that earlier, that a one-party state is what it seems to be a reason for Dominica. Yet we have a constitution that calls for a multi-party state. How do we reconcile that? And that's the challenge facing the people of Dominica. We are not committed to any one-party state, nor are we committed to a monarchy in Dominica. Those two things are alien political arrangements, have no place in our country. No monarchy and no one-party rule. That's all I'll say. I think tonight has been a great evening, great presentations by a distinguished panel. And I think that collectively we have underscored and clarified for the Dominican people what are the political problems that we have. And these political problems have a human rights dimension, and it means that we have to address them. I thank you for listening. Good night.
Thanks a lot, Ambassador Crispin Gregoire. I'm going to go over now to the Gabriel Christian and ask him to open his mic, and then I'm going to go over to Justice Dr. Irving Andre for the final word for the evening. So let's go over to the Gabriel. If you'll just unmute your mic so that we can hear you, Gabriel.
Thank you very much, Brother G. Thank you very much, Brother Lambert. I'm not sure whether the other brothers at Master Control, but I just want to give a warm salute to the departed Chief of Detectives of Scotland Yard, Brother David Michael, who was taught by Auntie Floss, and who was also a classmate of my brother, deceased Dr. Christian. So we honor his service. I want to take a special moment to salute our brother, our beloved brother, Superintendent George. I've known Superintendent George since the time that Dr. Finn and I were cadets. And he alluded to going to the armory every Thursday afternoon at 1500 hours, marching down to retrieve all rifles. And there was a young Nicholas George. He may have been just a constable then, a man who served the country, who's now facing an oppressive prosecutorial power only because he warned the police force that they cannot win if they decide to fight the Dominican people. He was telling them something legitimate and wise. And today, they oppress him and send police to his house to arrest him. Why? I want to salute our brother Darren Sylvester of the land of the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta of the 1200s underlined the philosophy and the principle that no man is above the law. No man or woman is above the law. In Dominica, we have a prime minister who said no law, no constitution can prevent him from doing what he wants to do. So we gathered here tonight with Sister Simone Matthew and Brother Dion and Irving and our ambassador who spoke with passion tonight. Ambassador Gregoire is an outstanding citizen. He's an outstanding brother. He's an outstanding patriot and servant of the people. He's traveled the world and he's seen despots, and he's traveled through despotic nations, and he's seen the degradation of human life, where despotism has been able to extinguish the flame of liberty. So when Brother Crispin spoke this evening and warned the police commissioner and warned the government about its trend towards dictatorship, he did so with heartfelt ardor and great spiritual substantiality, warning us against the dark night that beckons onto us where we do not stand up for the righteousness that is the cause of liberty. So what shall we do? Well, for those who are listening and those of us here, dearly beloved, I say to those of you who have not yet joined, join us. Recruit others to join this cause. Pay your dues when your dues are due, because freedom, verily I say unto you, my brethren, verily I say unto you, my sister, freedom is not free. Write articles, do research, spread the good word that Dominicans are people of dignity, of honesty, and law abiding. People all over the world form their opinions of people by the people they meet. I repeat, people all over the world form their opinions about countries and nations by the people they meet. Let it be that when people meet a Dominica, they meet someone of high virtue, of dignity, of honesty, of law-abiding nature, someone who's competent, someone who's learning, not someone who's a scallywag, a banditti, mafiosi, a money launderer, a thief. That is not our designation. We have, all over this world, blazed a trail of nobility, of virtue, of intelligence among all our people. The only consolation I have is that all of the criminals who've been given those passports, who've been arrested, not any one of them are Dominican born. And for that reason, I say, to God be the glory, because the world shall know that these are the fakes and the fraudsters that they've placed on us, and that is not the real Dominica or the real Dominican. What else shall be done? Well, I say, let us persuade others who are out there to embrace democratic value. Let us educate ourselves about our history, about our country and its constitution. Let us reject those who come around and say things like, quote, boy, is your party. If the prime minister steals a little thing, he can do it, it's he that get the money. Or others who say, oh, the others used to do it too. That is foolishness. That is ignorance. That is unlearning. Let us reject that kind of conversation. When people come around and say to us that we should simply go along to get along because it's our party, quote unquote, whatever that means, let us never debase ourselves, that we give up ethics and principle in order to gain favor with the rich and powerful. Finally, I say, let us be prayerful. As Brother Dion is often heard to say, to God be the glory. for great things he has done. But let us not abuse God and say things on the stage to the masses while we dupe them and bamboozle them about God is good all the time, and all the time God is good when we're doing things that are ungodly. Let us never be hypocrites. Let us be men and women of rectitude. So I say, let us be patriots for our country. Let us be advocates for national liberty and unity. Let us be men and women, boys and girls of peace, of love, of caring, and of service. And it is this labor of love, it is this love of country, this love of humanity, that with all determination, we shall not only engage this cause, but that we shall proceed to final victory and that we shall win. Thank you very much. God bless all of you. God bless this cause. Onwards to victory for our country and for the betterment of all mankind.
Thanks a lot, Gable. Appreciate Dr. Andre. We're going to throw the weight of the evening's discussions on your back to bring the curtains down for us, but we know that you are quite capable of doing this. And I know that all the people who are in the overwhelming numbers listen to us all over the world. I know that they're looking forward to your closing up remarks as you bring us down to the end of this. We've overstayed our welcome. We've totally ruined the welcome. We were supposed to be here for 2 hours. I think I should complain that it's because of Dr. Irving Andre that we're here so late. So anybody out there who's blaming us for being out here so late, blame it on Irving Andre, okay? Dr. Andre, let me go to you now.
Thank you, Mr. G. I am so happy that we asked the proprietor of this radio station earlier on today for an extra 35 minutes so we can make our case to all and sundry. Again, let me thank you for the privilege. Let me thank my esteemed panelists. Let me thank them for allowing me to be among their ranks. Let me indicate, however, that the strength of a nation is not a measure of the intellectually gifted or the talented, but it is the plight of that soul toiler, that hewer of wood and drawer of water, that person who is striving against all odds, relying on honest means to provide for himself and his family. That is where we measure the strength of a nation. That person who says, I will not accept these surreptitious gifts under the cover of darkness, while similar persons who are in a worse condition than I am are deprived of a privilege of assistance at a time in their greatest need. The strength of our nation rests in those with limited means who stand strong. The strength of our nation lies not in those who call themselves doctors, but those who are known only by nicknames, those who bear the brunt of the state apparatus by calling the radio stations and making their case for good governance and for decency and integrity rather than militancy in their country. The strength of the nation is those who stand up firm. You talk about my back, unfortunately, it's so weak that it cannot even lift a bag of marshmallow. Those who stand with strong backs and bear the brunt of persecution and yet refuse to go on bended knee and beg for forgiveness and beg for favors and beg for things that they don't deserve. The strength of a nation relies on the strength of our leaders, whether in the pulpit, whether in other facets of life, who stand and who speak boldly and truthfully about what plagues us. The strength of our nation lies in those who will say that by the sweat of my brow, I am prepared to eat bread. I am prepared to live with my brothers rather than on my brothers. I am prepared to make a meal rather than be given a meal while others more deserving are deprived of the same. That is the strength of the nation that we are trying to build. That is why we must make this sacrifice. That is why we must give even the little that we have, because whether you like it or not, we're all in this thing together. We drown not individually, but we drown collectively. We rise not individually, but we rise collectively. And our generation has that burden, has that mission to ensure that we, while the nation is being buried into the ground, we do not sit by and say, hélas. We do not stand by and do nothing. We do not stand by and just say 1,000 novenas and ignore those verses in the Bible which says, help yourself and I will help you. Extend the helping hand to your brother. Extend the gratitude of the one leper. Extend the magnanimity and generosity of the Good Samaritan, the most reviled of his generation. That is what we have to do. We have to take up the mantle of those who, for myriad reasons, cannot do it for themselves. That is what nationhood is all about. That is what patriotism is about. That is what the Dominican people are about. We have to stand on that rich tradition of giving, of helping, of goodness, of all those other initiatives and institutions of caring that has sustained us throughout our history. Mr. George, you started your speech by saying you are alone in Dominica, but you are not alone. You cannot be alone. How can you be alone when you have persons who are prepared to assist in whatever way they can? Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Dr. Irving Andre. Gentlemen, it's really left for me to thank everybody. We've had a tremendous evening, but we need to thank everybody who's on Facebook and who's listening to us on Radio Land, all of our panelists tonight. Well, we need to just remind ourselves that tomorrow the work begins. Tomorrow, we hope that Lofty will be able to make some time to call one or two of us and share with him some of the way forward and the work that we have to do and how we'd like to engage our Dominican brothers and sisters in Dominica worldwide and friends of Dominica and international agencies and organizations. We hope that he will make a movement for us if he's listening tonight, that he would call us and try to see if we can get him a word or two on the hot seat or on the talk in the block. I'm pretty sure that Darren will be happy to talk to him. I'm sure that Dr. Andre will be willing to talk. Gabriel, Christian, and Christine Gregoire and Dr. Dion and Dr. Simone and Ralph and everybody else, Dr. Finn and Nicholas. I'm pretty sure that if we call David, Darren, they will talk to him. So we hope that Lofty is listening and that we'll take the word forward. I will continue to speak to the Dominican people and we'll keep telling them the work that we're actually doing, the causes that we're actively pursuing and supporting, so they know that this is not just something that we're talking about, but it is something that we're doing that we hope will be there for a very long time. So, gentlemen, I want to thank each and every one of you, Lambi and Sherwin. Thank you for being with us and keeping us on the air tonight. Ralph, we thank you. Nicholas, we thank you. Dr. Simone, we thank you. Darren and David, we thank you. Dion, Crispin, Gabriel, Emmanuel, and Dr. Andre, of course, we thank you as well. So let me just say a very, very pleasant good evening to everyone, each and every one of you. A very good night to all of our listeners, wherever you are in your neck of the woods, in Dominica, in the region, or globally. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. And everybody, let me just say thank you and good night to everybody. So you can unmute your mic so we can just say good night, everybody.
Lambi and
Good
Sherwin.
night. Thanks,
Thank you.
Lambi.
And Lambi, again, if there's something I have for you, feel free to give me a call.
Good job as usual, Lambi. Take care.
Have a good
God bless.
night.
Okay, so
Take care.
good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right.
All right, take care.
Bye.